Canada is a country. Waves of people came to this country, were welcomed by the folks who have lived here for millennia, the First Nation. And built this society with waves of people fleeing religious persecution, fleeing tyranny, fleeing to try and build a better life for themselves here than they had back home. Whether it's folks fleeing from world wars or fleeing from civil wars, these people always want the same thing: to be able to live in peace, to raise their families, to create a better future for themselves and their communities. And that is what Generation created, this extraordinary, diverse society we have. Now, Canada remains one of the only countries in the world where citizens are, by and large, positively inclined. And one of the reasons we are that way is because Canadians have confidence in our country.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to MKCANADA. I'm Andreas. With us is American Time Machine Kurt. How you doing?
Great, thank you.
What's your cat's name again?
This is Muffins.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Of course it is.
Vincent, how you doing? Good to have you back.
Not bad, not bad.
God, he shakes his head like he's just gone through so much pathos this week. I can't wait to hear about it. Divulgence, Jordan, how you been?
Good, man. Getting better. How are things?
Pretty good. And with us also is Stephanie Scott. Stephanie Scott, who does a lot of awesome murals across Canada. Actually, they're pretty based. I'm pretty into these murals. As you know, Vincent also does art. He does storytelling with art. Here's her Canadian credentials. This is the mural with Justin Trudeau in front of it.
I'm not in there, but my work is.
Yeah, and I think that should count. Like, that is what a propagandist really should aspire to do. So thank you for all you do to try to save Canada with like subtle, creative, conscious, cultural penetration, George calls it. I'm afraid to use that word on this show. But how are you all doing tonight? How are you doing, Stephanie?
I'm doing good. That was quite the intro. I don't think I can live up to that.
I just figured after that we'll be okay. What are some of the things like we've talked about before? You like Jodorowsky and Kubrick and your interests like that?
Yeah. I mean, I know a little bit about a lot of things. I might be quiet during this episode because everyone else seems to have a pretty in-depth knowledge or some sort of specialty. My specialty is a little more in the realm of art. As you can see, I'm here. I just pretty much finished this mural.
Yeah, I was looking at the creation of that. It's like the geometric thing that you're doing.
Yes, it is massive. It's probably 200 feet long. It's in a big corridor. There might be a big echo when I'm talking. I don't know. It's not the ideal, not the ideal setting for this, but
you sound good. We talk about all sorts of stuff, so don't be shy.
Art's gonna come up a bit because I've been thinking about Goodnight Dune, right, which is my favorite child's book. Did anybody have their mom read them Dune as a kid? My mom, I don't know, I'm not kidding here. This isn't the version of it, but she loved Dune and she had me want to read Dune as a child. Did your parents get you into Dune? How young were you when you heard about Dune, right? Because Dune, they're making the sequel. It's supposed to be big. It's coming out. What do you think? Who read Dune? Anybody?
I didn't read it at all. I saw the first movie of the remake, but no, I have not read any of the books.
Man. Vincent? Not even Vincent?
Sadly, no. I was a Tolkien guy, you know.
I am shocked, really, honestly. It's okay. Yeah. Here's the thing. I like it better than Tolkien. There's some things that are very important about Dune. The Jesuits are called the Bene Gesserit here, right? The women that run the priesthood. And there's the Star Wars gets a lot of its ideas from Dune. In fact, this Kessel Run for the spice trade, well, it's all about the spice in Dune. Tatooine, the first planet they go to in Star Wars with the 2 moons, our sons. It's a Sirius A and B. That Tatooine is basically, aside from Tunisia and Tartarine, which we talked about yesterday, which is kind of interesting. Tatooine, was that it? Oh, I almost found it. Right now, yeah. So Tatooine is now an ISIS waypoint, which is kind of, it's adding to the fun of Star Wars. But essentially, they were trying to make the Dune movie, couldn't do it, or decided not to, and then they created Star Wars to get around all the Herbert copyright infringement. And so there's a lot of stuff that's messed up about that. And I think Jodorowsky, Dune. Did you know that Jodorowsky was trying to make the Dune movie? Have you heard this story?
Yes. It's a good
So
documentary.
what do you know about this? What do you remember from that whole thing?
Me, I don't know. My memory's a little hazy on that.
Oh, you're on the spot. Talk. You got to give.
Oh God, didn't he have Mobius was doing the concept illustrations, wasn't he?
Right, and Geiger, H.G. Geiger.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like it would have been astounding. It's a shame it didn't get made.
All the artists that he collected to make Dune ended up becoming very important in their own right throughout Hollywood in different realms. All the cinematographer, lighting designer, props persons, the makeup persons, they just completely savagely gutted the team and crew of the film and destroyed it. But you can still see some of its influence on the 80s Dune movie, right? Because you can see like Lynch.
Sure.
They gave it to Lynch, which is interesting because Lynch is like Hollywood's surreptitiously submissive cult filmmaker, right? Like he comes off as being this crazy filmmaker, but really he's so status quo and he's like USC film. So I don't know. But it's amazing. Did you guys? Nobody seen Dune? Oh, let's move on. I guess if we've never seen Dune,
I haven't read. I've seen it. I just, like I said, I haven't read the books.
What did you think about the movie, man? Like the old one versus the new one. The new one put me to sleep. I couldn't even get through it. But the old one,
even with all the action, the Dune just it was kind of a little bit muted on that front. But I don't know. I kind of want to wait for the other parts and kind of see how it is as a whole.
I'm kind of hoping that like the first movie sucked on purpose so that people wouldn't go see the second one because they only want the fans to see the second one. I love that idea because movies that everyone hates are usually good.
Yeah, so I don't know. Well, I'm kind of just waiting. Like I didn't mind it, but it definitely didn't pack what it should have, in my opinion.
All right, I give up on Dune. How about we could do the ISIS official caught living in a Dutch village? This is fun. So he was living as a refugee. And this happens all the time, obviously, but this is this week's du jour, and I like it because it's so systematic. The system's designed. I've met people that work in Austria that their job is to help refugees, and they're like, "Yeah, it happens," because how can you be sure that they weren't at some point forcibly enlisted or something like that? But this guy was a high-ranking official who seemed really like gung ho about it being part of ISIS. I don't know. This is also because in the last couple of weeks, we've been showing things where Obama financed ISIS and where the United States and Canada both were working together to finance terrorist groups, human trafficking. The Canadian government allowed for human trafficking of teenage girls for ISIS, right? So what do you think about infrastructure that's supporting terrorism? At this point, it seems like we've got 20 years of it, and it's pretty blanketly obvious in our faces that the system that's supposed to be fighting it is like usual, like when it's same thing with drugs,
Trying to fight it, you end off. The best way to fight something in the end is usually to just control it in some way. So they did the same thing with street gangs, with drugs. If you end up being the ones that distribute it, that control it, then you get to dictate how bad it can really be. And I'm not supporting it, but it seems like that's what they end up doing with a lot of things. Could be one.
That's true. I mean, we don't even know. Maybe he's even a double agent or something. This is maybe no different than the CIA with Russia in the 80s and 70s. I mean, I don't know. Kind of crazy though.
Or they're monsters. I mean.
Okay, well, this one's fun. Classic rockers are getting vaccinated, so they could probably be touring soon, right? This was March of 2021, and then how'd that work out? David Crosby, iconic rocker, dead at 81. Just kidding. not correlated. I just thought it was kind of a punchline. 81's decent. I think good job. But what do you think? I mean, David Crosby, Stills and Nash. Birds?
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of their music. They're definitely part of the kind of rubbing up against the whole Laurel Canyon scene.
Right.
You know,
there's some weird Illuminati stuff.
There's some connections going on there for sure. Yeah, with the Birds, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's some interesting use of like Western occultism too, like moving into like Freemasonic art of the Old West. But I don't know. The Birds were pretty fun band. I'm not sure how I feel about the Birds.
Yeah, they
teach your children.
What's that song? Train Kept a Rollin'. I think they were the ones who originally did Train Kept a Rollin', and Aerosmith does a fucking awesome cover of that song.
I saw Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young in concert on like a Google property.
Yeah. Oh, really?
It's kind of bizarre. Yeah. It was Neil Young would do, I don't know if he still does, it was the Bridge School benefit. And I was on a road trip kind of through that area. And so it was like Mountain View, California.
Oh, yeah. That's hilarious.
And it was strange. I was with my friend. Okay. The whole vibe was very odd. But I was with my friend and she was wearing this really bizarre shirt. It was like tie-dyed with planets all over it. And next to us in this massive outdoor crowd, there was this weird guy who looked just like Larry David. And at one point, he took off his sweater, and underneath, he had on the exact same shirt that she had on. It was just the whole day was just all of these weird things.
Dude.
And it was after we had visited my family in the desert, and my aunt was like alluding to, paranormal activity and whatnot. Just the whole trip had a weird vibe in a good way, but.
That's weird. I totally always connect Crosby, Stills, and Nash with the desert and also with Jack Parsons because, the music about the alchemy. That's something I also wonder about. That Camp X thing, Jordan, we could bring up Camp X for a bit. Do you have any thoughts on the rocket designer, Gerald Bull and Camp X? So I looked into this recently. We were looking at Gerald Bull, and he was the Canadian scientist who worked for Saddam Hussein because he couldn't get the government to finance him. And he totally looks kind of like a clone of Wernher von Braun, really. I mean, it's crazy. But I didn't know at the time how close he was associated with Camp X and how basically they were trying to get guys out of Camp X by not giving them money in order to see where they would go. And there was like a huge espionage project. But like, what's the deal with Camp X again? It's like a site. It's a
training grounds at Pickering, which it's now called Pickering. But yeah, it used to be Camp X. It's a training ground for secret agents, a lot of Canadians, Americans, British, and it was kind of the spawning of a lot of the ideas that make up the James Bond movies, and just a lot of covert ops, a lot of intelligence and spy games, spy versus spy kind of stuff. A lot of that classic spy novel themes, so to speak, surround the camp. Took place World War II era is when they set it up, and there's a lot of interesting avenues with Camp X for sure, man.
At one point, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just gonna say I'm gonna maybe pull out one of my books here because I'm not. I don't remember the name Gerald Bull, so go ahead.
Yeah. Go away. I'll go back to him for a second, actually, as well. I was going to show a metaphor, but that takes longer because you know how crazy my metaphors are. But Gerald Bull was designing long-range artillery, and he moved from project to project, and they weren't letting him move forward. It would be a great Canadian movie. At some point, we should make it.
Okay.
And it'll be amazing. It'll definitely have transgendered natives in it and everything else we need to do to make the money. But it's going to be basically about this story about the Project Babylon supergun that he was building, which is based on the HARP project and not the AA HARP project, the single A battery HARP project, but it's a space gun project commissioned by the Iraqi President Saddam Hussein involved building a series of super guns that were based on research from the 1960s HARP project led by the Canadian artillery expert Gerald Bull. There are most likely 4 different devices in the program. The project began in 1988. It was halted in 1990 after Bull was assassinated. And parts of the super gun were seized and transited around Europe. The components that remained in Iraq were destroyed by the United Nations after the 1991 Persian Gulf War. Right, so this is that's why they always say, "Oh man, they have weapons of mass destruction, super weapons." It's not necessarily nukes; it has to do with all this other stuff, and the idea that they knew about ancient technology in Iraq as well, because there's all these Plato and Greek fire, heroes steam, like these ideas that they had from ancient times. They realized that most of those come from even older designs, and this thing's basically a giant bell gun, right? So. That was what Gerald Bull's main project was, but then he was assassinated by British Five Eyes intelligence, which is pretty brutal. The government definitely still work on these things now. There is a movie called Doomsday Gun, I guess.
Doomsday Gun?
Yeah, Akira. And then Akira is also a pretty good example. Yeah, I'll give you that. But yeah, then they murdered him, which is the kind of the thing. So let's see, early life, Ontario. Suffer complications, blah, 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 38, career, card program.
He studied in Laval, of course.
As they all do. I don't know what that
means. The worst ones in Laval, of course.
Super guns, created guns are still used to this day. He's kind of the Canadian Jack Parsons, man. Like, he was a rocket designer, but he was also into all sorts of super weapons beyond rockets, beyond nukes. Okay, over a period of a few months following, his apartment suffered several non-robbery break-ins, a threat of warning, but he continued to work on the project. He was assassinated on the 22nd of March, 1990. So, the CIA were like, don't do this. Or the British government were like, don't do it. The Canadian government, whatever you guys call yourselves. We're like, don't do this. And then he did this. And so then they killed him. He was assassinated on March 22nd, 1990, shot 5 times in the head and back. So you can't have an open casket funeral, right? At point blank range.
Suicide.
He was Epsteined. 5-foot range. While approaching the door of his apartment in Brussels, the New York Times reported that when the police arrived at the scene, they found the key still in the door, and his unopened briefcase contained nearly $20,000 in cash. Another account states he was shot by a 3-man team when he answered the doorbell. The cooperation between Bull and Saddam Hussein was an immediate threat to Israel, which had previous military engagements with Iraq during the Arab-Israeli War. Watching development of the gun, the Israelis feared it could be used to launch nuclear weapons, but the redesigned Scud missiles were of greater concern at the moment. But then there's CIA, MI6, the Chileans, the Syrians, Iraqis. You got to remember how fun it was in the 90s, right? Because it was a lot of different people. There was no like small part in that movie. Yeah, and the cocaine. We were talking about the cocaine the other day, and how you in the 60s you're thinking, man, CIA, like, stop doing cocaine, right? And they just wouldn't, and then they didn't. Is a spoiler alert. So, and if you want to see like examples of it, kind of, and this is kind of, but like episodes of Mission Impossible from the 80s, really will just, in the 60s too. But this show will blow your mind. I mean, because if you can find the 88 one, yeah, like this. Basically, they just take people and they trick them. They're like, okay, we're gonna have him get on a bus, and then he's gonna get off at the wrong place, but we're gonna put all these signs up that make him think that this is happening, and he's gonna jump out the window. Like, wait, who comes up with a plan like that? Why would you ever? And then it says at the beginning, this is a real plan that the CIA did in 19 whatever. Like, are you kidding me? Like, or they'll put a person in a room and then everyone gets to wear a mask to look like other people, and they have voice changers and everything like that, and they take him to the wrong building and he has to believe. It's like, why would you go to all of this trouble? Why would you literally, I mean, and what are the CIA? Are they just, and the MI6, are they just paid actors? Is it just like Degrassi? Do they spend their whole lives learning how to play parts? Wow. And this is all they like to do, is that they want to actually, the most fun part of the role is making people believe you're the character. So I don't know. It's crazy the more you look at it, because they're like, Mission Impossible would make a great show, because they were probably thinking that as they were tricking people at the time, Completely insane stuff.
I love how you try to bring up Degrassi in every episode.
You're telling me
it all comes back to Degrassi.
Of course, it's
Truman Show people all across the globe.
That's my call to arms. Is Degrassi? I just like that's what I say.
Yeah.
I can't find the thing. Snow White, Canada tax, stamp, cartoon, Disney. Come on, give it to me. Disney, Canada, stamp acts. Come on. I'm gonna find it, man. The Dwarves.
Snow White stamp tax.
Find it for me, man. I'm trying to find it. It's very important to me. So important. It's
Is
like
it it's not a,
it's like 1941, 1939, something like that. Novana's first thing that they ever made. I swear this matters. I don't know where it is.
I'm getting Snow
Disney
White Dwarves stamp sheets.
or Canada tax propaganda something.
You'd think that with
Seven
Snow
Wives Dwarves. It's called Seven Wives Dwarves. Okay.
Okay, all right. That's why.
All right. Seven Wives Dwarfs. Okay, so check this out. So in 1939, the British government, in conjunction with the United States government and Walt Disney, actually paid Disney to not just make this, right, but to make this in a bigger sense. They brought the equipment, they duplicated the equipment. The British government paid for it and had copies made in China style copies made of the Disney studio in Canada. And they produced this first project in collaboration with the Disney studio. And after that, then they were kind of just kickstarted on their own and supposed to just figure out what they're supposed to do. So you've got some of the original Disney stuff so they can learn how to work with it and how the layers go. And then they're supposed to make something for the government. So after work, they all start walking and they keep walking until they get to Ontario. And when they get to the post office, they buy some war-saving certificates, right? And that's where you put your jewels and you pull out these certificates because, of course, you know it's going to be worth twice as many Canadian loonies. So then he goes home and he's even goes back to get more, you know, because he's like he had to get the second kiss kind of thing. Lend your savings to war. So this is the beginning of Canadian media in a lot of ways, and specifically of Nelvana, right? And Nelvana is like, if you're a kid and you in any country, you've seen Nelvana cartoons because they do like Babar and PBS, and they do all
everything.
They do it all, you know.
Nelvana. Oh, that's
they're like
such vivid memories of that production page.
Freaking bear.
State-sponsored terrorism. That bear.
That's right. That bear.
You look at some of the earlier stuff they did. I want to think of an earlier one than Devil and Daniel Mouse, but let's just go there. Wow. So Nelvana in 78 did this amazing thing called The Devil and Daniel Mouse. And granted, they did stuff before this, but this is at least when I started paying attention, or when I started realizing, okay, there's something going on with this company, and they're more interesting than other companies. It's about these two mice. One of them's name is Daniel. I forget the girl's name, but they're both trying to be folk singers in like Thunder Bay or something, or maybe it's like North. It could be, to be fair, I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure it's something like that. And they're going to go to the big city. They're going to go to Toronto because they want to become famous. They want to become famous. They want to be famous like Famous Amos, you know. And their music, nobody wants to hear their music because it's folk music, right? It's like, let the music move you. And they're like, okay, this is just, you know, you got to have a heart to like this kind of music.
Doobie Brothers.
Maybe what we got to do is like make music other people want. Maybe we got to just stop listening to our heart so much and sell our soul to the devil, the Canadian devil himself. And it's weird how many times the Canadian devil has appeared as a Canadian devil. Like there's literally a Canadian devil avatar so many times. Like why does South Park have one? Why is there a Canadian version of the devil? Beelzebub, the devil. And he buys her soul and he sells her fame. And the other mouse stays poor and he's still working on stuff. Meanwhile, a whole band assembles itself around her. She gets to become famous and she's like signed on because she signed her name in blood. But she's about to lose it, right? Because he's going to come and get her. You know what I mean? Like he's coming for her. And so, yeah, I forget the exact resolution of this because I don't think it's very clear. I believe it's kind of ambiguous whether she goes to hell or not.
Probably.
And whether he sells his soul. I think he sells his soul to try to play their song. They maybe make it look a bit like people really like the song. I forget how it works. Anyway, this is the beginning. This is when Novana goes, okay, we can do what we want. Kids are watching. We have complete control. It's a minor risk. It's only Canada. There's only the Canadian kids to worry about right now. And then we'll funnel it. We'll funnel it into Indianapolis, and then we'll see. We'll see where it goes from there. Then Novana does the rock and roll movie. We talked about rock and roll a bit before, but I think just bears repeating that this is the craziest thing that Canada's ever done. I know it's
really good.
This is an amazing. This is an amazing, beautiful, brilliant. Look at those lips, so everything about this movie. Well, I mean, the thing is, I'll come at it from a good angle, but you have to understand a lot of non-Canadians don't see it the way we do, right? So this movie doesn't come off as just like adorable, like and beautiful to everybody. It actually has, some people see this and they're like, "What? I don't know." That's what I don't know what it's like. They don't know what it's like to do so much cocaine your nose falls off in 1974 Toronto. I guess that's what that scene's clearly demonstrating. But there's
probably some acid in there somewhere, though.
This movie has so much acid and other chemicals. I mean, French-Canadian disco chemicals. It started out where I think they're in a Montreal nightclub, the creators of Novana, and so is Iggy Pop, Lou Reed, Cheap Trick, Earth, Wind, and Fire. And it might have been also that they went to a couple other clubs. I think they might have gone to Studio 54, and then there's a Toronto famous nightclub as well. But they connected doing cocaine probably with all of these different artists, including Blondie, right? And they made this incredible, they were like, we're going to make a cartoon. It's going to be full length. It's going to be a musical. And it's going to have everybody. It's going to be the craziest thing you've ever seen. It's going to have music by every band you've ever thought was cool. And some bands we've forgotten, right? And like side projects of bands, right? So the thing is, it's a brilliant idea. The problem is it's made by a mutant communist British Canadian version of Disney. Like all of that is an insane thing. And what you end up with are mutant rats that are anthropomorphic. And I mean, just like the trickle down from Disney to this, it's like there's something lost in translation a little bit. Having said that, it's amazing. But I think your average audience looked at it and were just horrified, so it didn't sell very well. And then the fact that the plot, the plot is in the future after the apocalypse and during the reset, when the occult, cocained out, acid rock stars rule the world again, and they throw concerts where they wire women to circuit boards to play MIDI sounds through them after they're selected from the American Idol dance competition. Then we'll use the audience to summon and feed the demons, right? And then that'll be how we become immortal. Unless, according to this computer this dude made, which is literally made out of brains that he's like siphoned off of dead people, unless like a song is created that will defeat the devil. So it's very similar really to Devil and Daniel Mouse in a lot of ways. I feel like it doesn't end. What's up, Thomas?
Hey guys. American. Don't threaten me with a good time, bro. I'll show right up.
I was wondering if you'd seen Rock and Roll. Have you seen Rock and Roll?
I remember seeing this, but man, my early 90s experience in the early 80s kind of sucked because I always had to go and do all sorts of activities. So this would come on right as I was getting dragged out of the house to go and like play soccer or something.
Oh, brutal.
So this brings up like memories of all the things that I missed out on.
You need to watch this movie now, of all people, And so the idea here where this is it Lou Reed who's playing? It's Iggy Pop. I forget if it's Iggy Pop or Lou.
Lou Reed does the singing. I'm not sure if he does the dialogue as well.
But I think Iggy Pop does some of the songs.
Yeah, Iggy Pop is in there too.
I forget which one's which. I think Iggy Pop does like the weird like mind control TV songs. Triumph of the Glory of Me. But this
that's
guy,
Lou Reed.
Oh, that was Lou Reed, not Iggy Pop?
I've been listening to the soundtrack lately.
Okay. Good job.
It's so good. The invocation song is really good too. When she's summoning the demon, it has this Patti Smith vibe to it.
Invocation, Rock and Roll. That is Iggy Pop, right? Or no, that's Lou Reed?
No, it's Deborah Harry. It's when she's wired to the circuit board.
Oh, that one. Yeah, but what's the
Yeah.
one where he's like upside down in a river of blood? That one.
I'm not sure the name of that one, but
I thought that was
think
the
it's right
invocation.
after it.
Oh, that's the one he does like the preamble for the invocation song. Brutal movie in every respect. I mean, so yeah, like I said, he's got a girl who wins a contest, and because she wins the contest, he knows she's the chosen one because he's got a computer that's looking for the chosen one. You know, like he wants to be immortal, and the only way to do it is to find a voice that'll open this portal. And finally, you know, he finds her. I mean, once he does, though, he still needs to feed the audience and use all the city's electricity in order to open the portal to the demons. So it's just pretty crazy. I mean, it's the craziest movie. I can't even believe this movie exists.
You're blowing my mind, and I'm absolutely flabbergasted, and I've never used that word before on a podcast. But this even exists, and it's gone, over my radar, man. This is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to watch this weekend.
Every song, yeah, I gotta get the vinyl now. Somebody send me the vinyl. Triumph of the glory of me. It's like out of control. Satanism, occult, Illuminati, mind control.
And there's like some tailspin going on here too.
So the preamble, which I just explained, but I'll just try to like say quickly again, is that Disney created this in a sense because Disney created the Disney animation company Novana when the military financed Disney to create Seven Wise Dwarfs. And so all of the Disney Seven Wise Dwarfs, they bought the equipment, they had them use the equipment, they taught them how to make anthropomorphic, funny-looking characters. Like Donald, I think Daffy Duck is Donald Duck is the one they did beyond this because they didn't want to share Mickey Mouse with people because Mickey Mouse is their own weird thing. But basically they show the dwarves buying war certificates, and after that, that's how the Canadian militarized propaganda machine begins. That's how Canadian media starts. I mean, in a lot of ways. Right. And when I say starts, you have to remember, like, before that, that's not the way you would do things. They did do stuff before that, right? And we talked about If Day before, but it's a good frame of reference for how it worked. In Canada and in Europe, in the Middle Ages, you would do guerrilla theater, like Renaissance-style guerrilla theater. And this is also what they still do in Indonesia. Clowns will show up and they'll perform and they'll do a crisis and they'll pretend and they'll laugh about earthquakes that aren't real, and people will be prepared for something that's coming. It's a kind of way of relaying messages instead of having a formal piece of paper that you're reading all over the place. So it gives you an idea of what to prepare for. The If Day situation, which was brought to my attention by Jordan's the one who actually showed me this, I had no idea about it before this, was the Nazi simulated invasion and occupation of Winnipeg, right, in 1942. So what they did was they made it look like the Canadian government had been taken over. Let me see if I can get the If Day Canada pictures of the newspaper. It's just like hidden, man. I gotta go here. Oh, there you go.
It's almost like a Nazi War of the Worlds almost.
Yeah, but it was like you went outside and your average leader was dressed as a Nazi. You know what I mean? And the Nazis these actors would walk into the Parliament building or into the post office and take over the building. And they brought down the Canadian flag and brought up the Nazi flag. And all kind of as this guerrilla theater to show you what it would be like, right? If this were to happen, how would you react? So yeah, totally War of the Worlds, you know.
And this predates Ari Shaffir, I think, too.
That's right. Have you guys, if any of you guys have played the newer Wolfenstein video games, those are cool because it shows what like an kind of a snapshot of, I think, like the 60s and I think the 70s of what it would be like if the Nazis won the war. And they go into great.
How did you compare it to Man in High Castle?
I haven't seen enough of that, actually. That's on my list, and I just
High Castle kind of presupposes that it would immediately start to dilapidate because as soon as there's no reason to continue to accelerate. Whereas grosser consumerism forced us to continue to grow and expand in a hypothetical direction.
Okay, the games are like not like that. They're just like full force, all steams ahead. I mean, there's even like collectibles in the game, like vinyl, and there's different covers of popular like Beatles songs or other pop songs, but like they're done by German bands and stuff. It's interesting. It goes pretty in depth to a lot of.
Have you seen Iron Sky?
No,
Yeah.
that looks
man.
awful.
Oh my god, Iron Sky is
It's
the
so
greatest
good
movie.
though. It's
Based on a true
best
story.
bad movie.
Is that Jason Statham?
I forget that's his name, but this guy,
The
not
bald guy.
Statham.
No, the bald
Is
guy.
it? No, it's not. It's some other guy, I think. I don't think it's Statham. It's some other. It's a
It's
Finnish.
the Wish.com Jason
It's the
Statham.
it's the
Yeah,
Finnish
it
version.
totally is Wish.com. Jason Statham.
See, a movie
Basically,
like
this
this,
is a Kickstarter movie, so it was financed by people like me,
It's a
literally.
Wish.com.
it looks like a CIA project.
Well, okay. It
No,
doesn't-
it doesn't look that good.
Let's make the cheapest movie possible, and then we're just gonna hide the truth in it. Like
Man,
a B
Vincent.
movie kind of thing.
Vincent is sometimes just so hyper aware. It scares me. But but what happened was official story. The Finnish group, Iron Sky Der Filma, whatever. Like they wanted to make a movie as a group of friends that made sci-fi stuff, and they wanted to make a short film. It was just going to show how crazy it would be. They could use all these special effects to make it look like there was Nazis on the moon. And people were like, "What? Nazis on the moon? That's a great idea. I'd love to see that movie." And then they put money into the Kickstarter to the point that they're like, we could literally actually just pay our favorite actors from around here. There are tons of these Euro stars that we've seen in Ace Ventura. That would be great. Why don't we just do that? And they did it. And it was amazing. You got to imagine if you've never made a movie before, it's still going to be kind of weird. And if it's all shot on green screen, well, there's that. But it's still, I mean, considering all that, it's still just amazing. And but again, the problem with it is, maybe not a problem, but the issue that's happening to the Nazis is that because there's no reason to evolve. They once they've gotten there, they're stuck. And then on Earth, the iPhone is in one hand 1,000,000 times more powerful than everything that they have in space because they've never worked on getting better technology since they've moved to the moon. So it's a weird kind of silly aspect of it. Kind of funny movie. But it's interesting. And the sequel goes into the Vril, right? And the idea that the Vril have been running the show the entire time.
Okay.
I mean, it's got to give it some slack. I mean,
If they had raised even more money, they
maybe.
could have
Well
just
thought
went
out.
to the moon and shot it themselves. And
That's
got
what
the
I was
real
gonna say.
Nazis.
They got so much money, they could just send Nazis to the moon.
Did Kubrick do this? Is this his?
it's the idea, right?
This is a Kubrick movie?
I wonder about Kubrick, though, because, that's the other thing. How much of what Kubrick said and did was to point out what was going on, and how much of it is really, are we just reading into? Because, looking at a lot of his notes, he'll talk about sexuality.
That just gets me like when you're thinking about like conspiracy theories and stuff.
George
like,
just threw the chair across the room in his mind. He's like,
yeah,
don't
it's
tell
like
me.
at what point is it a coincidence? Like how many coincidences are you gonna earmark until you realize like something's going on here?
Mine's about 5 or 6, I think.
Yeah, that's okay. It's quite a few.
I'll take it. I feel like, the NASA cameras, the fact that he switched for Barry Lyndon to cameras that NASA gave him, that's pretty fun. That gives me some wonder. But also it makes you wonder, like, why then Barry Lyndon? What's he saying about America and the founding fathers in general? What's he saying about anti-disestablishment?
Yeah, I just had. I was going through my Criterion collection. I just went through the Barry Lyndon book, and I was like, kind of thinking that same thing. I was like, I don't know. It's my least favorite Kubrick movie, which I don't know. It seems to be for a lot of people, but yeah.
I
No,
like Barry Lyndon.
Yeah, it's chill.
No, she's throwing the fucking chair across.
I like Barry Lyndon, like, super big.
But it's not my
projected.
favorite.
Once it's projected and you're like in it, it's a Kubrick movie. You know what I mean? But if you're trying to watch it on your phone or something, it's obviously not a
That
movie.
movie.
It's
What
not
an
the way-
interesting concept, though, of watching a movie shot by candlelight on a cell phone screen.
Yeah.
Just rolling in his grave.
I've done it. I've had bacon on veggie burgers. You just shouldn't do it. Brazil Parada. Thank you so much. We love you. Let's bring it. You're one of my favorite people. 11-11. Yes.
11-11.
And there was another one. JK Nonstop. Iron Sky is a really fun movie. Amazing OST. Yeah, exactly. And good music. Exactly.
I think there's a sequel too that was better than it should have been, just like
Yeah,
the original.
The Vril. That was the Vril one. Yeah. Okay, so here's the nice thing about Made in Canada is that there's a lot more organ donors in Canada than have ever existed anywhere else before. It's like beating
so
China.
Fucked up.
So, yeah, what do you think?
I have myself as an organ donor for everything except for my eyes.
I'm not donating my organs to nobody but worms, bro. I don't know. I feel bad about it, kind of, but only because I just don't trust. You've seen Monty Python, Meaning of Life?
I haven't seen any Monty Python. That's just not my cup of tea, dog.
So I'm 6 years old. Let me walk you through it. And all of a sudden, I'm watching The Meaning of Life. And it's great. It starts out with a dude who's like, he's been sentenced to death, but he gets to choose why and how. And so it's because he grabbed boobies and he's being chased off a hill by women who are topless. Right? So it's all about life itself. And there's a scene where they show an organ donor.
The human condition in a nutshell.
They show his organ. Basically. Let me pull up the organ donor. They pull up this organ donor, and the guy shows up at his house, and he's like, "Excuse me, you signed this card to say you're an organ donor?" And he's like a Rastafarian with his hair or something, like he's a hippie. I don't know exactly what they're trying to say. But then he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm using it right now." I was like, "Yeah, but we need it right now." And then they just go into his house and they take it from him. While he's alive, and he's like, yeah, it's really doing a lot of good for the community, etc. And so I remember at 6 years old seeing that, like, I don't want to be an organ donor. But now you look into that stuff, and the idea that they're like, wow, we really need an organ, and this guy's like kind of on the edge here, like, just let it happen. I mean, what's the likelihood?
What you're doing is you are proactively giving someone else an incentive for you to not live anymore. Like at the very practical execution of that, that's exactly what's happening.
I mean, I like how good people are, though. It's amazing that people are like, I'll give you my blood and my organs. Like, I love that exists. But I think that it's a scary and inspiring enough phenomenon that it can exist without me. And there's enough people doing that probably it'll work out. But yeah, I know it's hard for people.
You're like Michael Keaton in Desperate Measures, man. You don't want to help the dying kid.
I just don't want to pull the wings off a butterfly that's in the mud. You know what I mean? No.
I wonder if there's ever going to be a
talking like a politician over here.
Was that a champagne excuse? I'm sorry.
No.
Do you think there's ever going to be like a cosmetic or like an elective version of this where people just want to switch out their eyes with someone's other organs?
Have you ever seen Repo Man?
Yes.
Repo Man is the musical one?
There's the musical one and the non-musical one, but I mean the premise isn't that far off. We're gonna be heading for customized humans soon, but it might just be digital instead, using avatars. Like that's cheaper basically than having our actual bodies modified, or else we're gonna see cat people running around and stuff. Like there's no real end to it.
Yeah, cats don't do so good.
They're gonna do pretty good. There's a lot of people who like cat people for some reason. It's creepy.
That might be the next version of If Day. Is you start seeing a bunch of cat people roaming the streets, and it's like, now we know it's coming.
The furries.
I mean, this is off topic, but I don't know, it kind of weirds me out. First AI discovered drug has positive results in phase 1 trials. What makes me think about is that it costs so much money to make a drug because of all the people, all the riffraff, and all the people along the way. And if you cut out all of that, and you just middlemen are gone, and the drug is just made by itself in a lab, and they can push this out faster, then isn't this a good thing? Because you could just have generative drugs literally made on the spot in the local library, right? A library could have a 3D printer. It should be able to have a drug making machine. You go and you look at your blood. It tells you what you need. It generates specifically chemicals that would target you based on millions of other algorithmically discovered drugs that it's made. And then this just ends all of our health problems. Isn't that a good thing, or should we be scared of AI discovered drugs?
I'm all for it. I love it. Although I want the psychedelic version of this one.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely be scared of that though, because like Bromo Dragonfly, there's a lot of those things where like they're really awesome if you have like a bazillionth, one bazillionth, I think is the metric ton fraction that you want, of a grain of the drug, but it's like how many millions of angels are dancing on the head of a pin kind of a thing. So if you eat just a little bit too much of this tiny grain, then you might get gangrene or something like that. So that's, you got to be really careful about.
But if you had the AI, you could almost like real time dynamically get the antidote for all of that, because like there's ways that you can almost counterbalance almost any sort of psychedelic introduced into your system by the right amount of thing to oxidize it or just to help you process it. So theoretically, this could just keep you in like the perfect state that you wanted all the time forever.
All right, my first image that comes to mind is Fat Elvis, though.
What scares me the most about these isn't what the technology, but it's what people that wouldn't want everyone to live forever would do in order to make sure they're the only ones that get the special patch.
I mean, the thing is, once you start throwing a bunch of stuff in your system, so like, let's talk about Mormonism for a second. What if you avoid it all? Because if you drink coffee because you took something that made you sleepy at night, you drank a nightcap, and all of a sudden you're throwing your system out of whack. I don't know. It seems to me you're better off if you don't have millions of different things flowing through your system trying to keep you at a new equilibrium. It seems like you naturally have an equilibrium. Or you become Fat Elvis, which is awesome. I always advocate for Fat Elvis because I love Elvis, and I think his whole like black magic, like Hindu clothing, cultural appropriation thing is amazing, and I love it. And he's a patriot, and he was fighting with Nixon, and like, how exciting is that? And yeah, who doesn't want to live like Krishna? Who does not want to live off pure ghee? Everything about what he did makes sense. He died reading a Kundalini manual. I'm not trying to say.
Is that what he was reading?
He was opening the clouds in the sky on his limousine rides in order to make sure he didn't die in floods. I mean, there's a lot that we need to know about this dude who probably sold his soul. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, I recently saw Elvis's Honolulu show.
Did he kill himself? Was it a slow suicide?
Well, they say he died on the toilet, right? Honolulu Elvis last show.
One of them 3-man shooting.
So the way they present it is it like, oh, we found him on the John, he was dead. And you're like, well, really, let's look into that. What really happened was he died of a heart attack while doing like Kegel exercises and lion breathing exercises to some extent. While he was also on like Quaaludes and butter, and things like that aren't good for your
butter, like marijuana byproduct.
Yeah, no butter. Actual like Krishna.
Oh, he like, a butter in his stomach.
The food.
Ghee. Yeah, like ghee is this like according to the Vedics, their blue god Krishna ate nothing but ghee, which is purified butter, right? So it's just it's really good. But the thing is, most people aren't like blue gods, so they probably shouldn't live off pure butter. I don't know.
Do you typically just straight eat it out of the bottle with a spoon, or do you like put it on things?
I mean, I'm using statements, but very infrequently here because I don't want to tell you too much about what I do with my ghee or where it goes. But no, I love ghee. Ghee. I mean, you ever love butter on toast? So the thing is, you put ghee on your rice or anything. Ghee's amazing. But like, if you're just literally eating ghee because you're like, wow, Christian ate nothing but ghee, I better eat nothing but ghee for a while. It's kind of like reading one Bible verse or something like that. I think you're missing the broader point of the others. Krishna did no wrong. There's other stuff he did as well. Like, you can't just go around sinning and eating ghee. So I don't know. But like Elvis, you see him like his last couple shows, and it's just like, he's sputtering, because he's weighed down.
He's just walking around.
His heart's like soft, but his heart's being pushed. It's just, there's amphetamines and Quaaludes, and it's like at a certain point, man, he's like leaning on women because he can't stand up straight. That's what scares me about the pharmaceutical world that we're heading into. Is we were already there in the 50s and 60s. After World War II, we stole all the Nazi drugs. We started producing diet pills out of pilot amphetamines. And we ended up here, and it's only getting worse. It looks like, because now we're talking about. But yeah, I hear you that like the answer is pharmaceutical psychedelics, because then at least people get to feel good if they're taking these drugs. Otherwise, what is the point of these things? It seems like they're just getting the world more and more dangerous.
Well, there's a little bit of a dovetail too, though, because in addition to what they found, because they found mescaline and amphetamines in like the concentration camps and saw what they were using it for. But even prior to that, in the States, right, they discovered mescaline and started doing actual sort of scientific research on it by the 1880s. And that kind of immediately dovetailed also once they discovered adrenaline and they realized how similar mescaline and adrenaline were to each other. And this is pre-World War II, so pre-concentration camp. And then once we actually found what they were, I think they found a journal in Dachau that showed how they were using mescaline to induce schizophrenia and dementia and all sorts of other mental states. And that's when they were like, hey, they might be onto something. Let's give this a little bit more research at this point.
Right. Yeah. 1890s, like the ecstasy, methylene to methamphetamine and mescaline and a bunch of these different things were discovered in the 1890s. And it's just crazy to think about what the Germans were doing at that time because they're traveling around South America and they're looking into the native medicines. But so did 200 years earlier the Jesuits. And so, you know, we look at Jesuit science and Jesuit medicine and see how pharmaceuticals have developed, specifically opiates. And it's interesting because on one hand, you've got a group that have for centuries figured out weird ways of engineering privatization and monopolization of these sacred substances, and another group which just studied them and put the papers out. And so, of course, the ones where you have the data, where anyone can kind of work with it and you can synthesize it yourself, that's the stuff that they tell you not to know about. That's the stuff they tell you is dangerous. And then they put you on opiates, which is just, it's crazy. It's crazy what they're doing.
I mean, there's an interesting thread here, too, that we might not even have the Aleister Crowley as we know without mescaline, because his original days of getting into the Golden Dawn were largely influenced by his mentor giving him this this strange little plant that he didn't even mention. He vaguely mentioned it as like this little cactus, I think, after about 8 or 9 years, and then he mentioned it by name. And I think he called it like Williamsy, or I'm going to butcher the name of it, but it was basically getting this from his in-town chemist. And there's this direct link, right, between new science and alchemy to this old magic in like the new world. And again, like this is the very same time that we're discovering it in the States, 2 decades later. Crowley's using it. And there's some interesting theories that I don't think have a lot of credit to them, but that Crowley meets up with Aldous Huxley in Berlin, I think in like 1931 or something. And that there's some suggestions that it might have been Crowley that told Huxley about mescaline, which then turns him into writing Doors of Perception years on. Even if that's not true, though, the one that did introduce Huxley to mescaline ends up being one of the main researchers related to MKUltra. So there's this huge circle that just ties over and over and over.
Oh.
Man, that's crazy. I mean, John C. Lilly was hired mainly to originally reverse engineer LSD. That's the main thing that they wanted him to do, is figure out how to make it themselves. And then along the way, he's like, I can't quite do that, but I can come up with weirder stuff for you.
I can bang these dolphins.
I can, basically. And he did, and indeed he did. But also the DMT and creating different kinds of psychedelic mescaline derivatives. He was kind of back and forth with Shulgin too. So it's also interesting because you've got the Nichols drugs, which there were research pharmaceutical psychedelics, and those seem like more dangerous. Bromo dragonfly gives you gangrene if you take too much of it, right? It's a very dangerous one. Some of these other psychedelics that came out of the Nichols lab are in Indianapolis, Indiana, University of Indiana, they're some of the most potent psychedelics in the world, but they can kill you. Whereas Shulgin created some of the safest ones, and he was the one that they were targeting all the time until he became friends with the DEA agent who ended up doing MAPS psychedelic therapy. And, in a post-traumatic stress recall, realized that he'd been as a child in a Texas church that had an earthquake and collapsed, and that the roof had decapitated somebody in front of him, and he'd been blocking it out since he was 12. So after that, he just kind of realize, okay, there are so many things about these psychiatric chemicals that can be used to release dopamine and serotonin that can be used then in conjunction with a psychologist or some sort of a therapist to help you process those things while you have the biopharmacological ability, because you're feeling okay, because otherwise it's just too freaking traumatic. So I think it's interesting because that could lead to better medicine, but also, will we trust it? Will we trust AI solutions? Because what if AI that's the other thing. Like AI comes up with what's that movie from Canada. Brain Candy. Have you seen Brain Candy?
Oh, Kids in the Hall.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna say video from or whatever. No,
There's a lot.
That's-
There's a lot of places to go. Once I said video from Canada, I was like, oh god, that's like you in the hat, or something. But Brain Candy. No, that's the wrong one. Brain Candy. Kids.
what?
Oh, greatest movie. At the end of the movie, he says something like, life is terrible, and then you die. It sounds better in the original Croatian, which I thought was
Nice.
I was like, man, Canada gets me back. It's just, it felt so good. I felt welcomed by Kids in the Hall. But this movie is incredible, and it's all about a drug that works, right? Isn't that, what do you guys remember about this?
Well, it doesn't work because it traps people in a loop that endlessly makes them feel happiness, even if they're not actually.
Mission solved. I thought that was isn't that what it was for?
All we need.
Yeah, but it makes them catatonic, so it's not really
Not a big problem.
But that's a failure. That's a failure of the corporate aspect of this. So even if
Is it working? Is that happening to everybody or just to some of the people? Is it eventually inevitable that everyone will have that happen?
Put something on the
pretty much
label.
implied.
I felt it was like,
I think it's
there
good
was a
for
high
like
risk.
I think it's good for retiring very, very old people and traumatized people. Like it's better to be catatonic than, I guess, absolutely miserable.
Yeah, sure. I mean, they definitely do that. They make things that just to make you feel calm while you can't assess what's going on for years. Man, it's horrifying.
Yeah, it is.
But they were talking about a drug that was supposed to be that it would recall your like last completely happy memory, and then using that it would latch on to the receptor, and then that would help you have a natural release of all of the chemicals like dopamine, cortisol, serotonin, etc. GABA. They would all be released naturally. And it seems to work at first, right? Everything seems fine, except for that some people end up catatonic. But I mean, medicine has drawbacks. A lot of people do die when you take pills. It's not like, have you ever seen a pill that doesn't have a warning label and tell you what the side effects include? And the side effects are longer. Like there's like 6 pages of side effects.
Well, and if it's releasing all chemicals, then that would also include histamines, right? And that would give you a pretty rough experience if you just dumping histamines into your system all day long.
Ooh.
I'm a classic psychonaut, so I can't vouch for pills, things made in a lab. It's hard to trust. You never know what's actually in them. But if you grow it yourself, you put it in the earth. I mean, that's the connection you have to actually have, I think.
Yeah,
trying to get things through pharmaceutical and AI. Like AI is still learning. We should learn more from the earth itself instead. We have all the tools there.
Yeah, we had to hook AI up with the earth. Just let them talk back and forth. I think that would be better. That'll probably work itself out.
Well, I mean, we took everything to make AI out of the earth in the first place, so we better get it to connect because we disconnected it in the first place. So, yeah, do it.
Did Terrence McKenna die because he ate mushrooms that caused brain rot, or is that an urban legend?
He said it was from years of smoking marijuana. So, 40 years of smoking marijuana every 20 minutes.
Dubious that's gonna. I don't think that's what it was.
Hey, I think that there's adverse effects to smoking marijuana.
You don't think it was more likely that he was eating like so many copious doses of all sorts of mushrooms, including ones he didn't know the.
No.
What's most likely is that he got a brain tumor from literally living under a military grade satellite dish.
Dang it!
That's
Razor. Yeah, there he is again. Okay, fair enough.
Got him.
So
you can't argue with that logic,
No.
I think with brain tumors, I don't know a lot about brain tumors specifically, but I think there might be a higher chance that brain tumors can just happen randomly. So I don't know to what degree it would have been a substance in his case, but I think anything that you smoke naturally just puts a lot more, gives you a lot more direct things into your bloodstream that can negatively have adverse effects on your brain. Because, anything that's immediately in the bloodstream, I assume there's a lot more adverse things that you can get from directly smoking marijuana. Whereas, if anything, with the whole neurogenesis thing that people always talk about with psychedelic mushrooms, I personally don't see it. I don't see it as a potentially toxic substance, because really it's just the psilocybin that breaks down into the psilocin, and that it gets more indirectly put into your bloodstream than smoking anything really. So yeah, I think if anything, maybe it can enhance your cognitive qualities, and perhaps.
So you know how steroids though, like, will shrink your testes, boys. All right. So my question
tell me about that. Tell us about that.
If you have, if you take hormones, neurohormones, what will that do to your neurohormone transmitters and the production glands?
Well, I think, it's about balance, about moderation, and if you do it properly, if you abuse anything,
that's what a swole boy would say, though.
But I mean, if you smoke too much marijuana, it has adverse effects. If you take too much mushrooms, it has adverse effects. If you snort too much cocaine, it has adverse effects. And it's really about balance and finding that sort of equilibrium.
With Terrence, like, I remember I listened to one of his interviews where he said that marijuana is a very mild psychedelic, and I think I understand where he's coming from, because I will have time, like, if you get really high and then you just like,
after that, I mean, everything's getting shot in the face is calming.
Well, now I know, like, there's a certain buoyancy, I will say. So once you're like introduced to psychedelics, generally speaking, I think that lowers the threshold for you in some ways. Like, you can get more out of the experience once your brain is kind of wired to enjoy it and go diverge into different thought patterns. So I think once marijuana can complement that process very well, I think, I don't know from experience or anything.
I think
it was very interesting to hear him talk about that. And I think with the downside to some psychedelics is, well, they get into certain receptors and whatnot. I think if you indulge on them a lot, it does kind of mess with your reward system a little bit. Like, you can't just get pleasure in your life only from substances or psychedelic substances, even though they're pretty low on the harm scale. I think the overarching theme is really you have to find ways to integrate those experiences into your construction of reality. And so I think eventually you need to get to the point where if you felt like you got a boost out of those and from those experiences, you end up seeing the world in a different way, and then you don't need the psychedelics. So if you
drink in The Sims, does your character become an alcoholic? And at what point does it stop making them pleasured?
Wait, and American Time Machine. Sorry, what's your name, or is it just American Time Machine?
Kurt. You can call me Kurt.
Kurt. Nice to meet you, Thomas.
Paranoid American and American Time Machine. Oh my God, the soundtrack for the comic movie. All right, sorry, I'll call
you were mentioning, man, it made me think of this concept called inverse tolerance, which is supposed to be specific to Salvia divinorum, one of my favorite sort of concepts in this. But so on two notes on that, one is that's the exact aspect of inverse tolerance, is that you sort of understand the threshold, so it takes less of the process away, like less of the experience melts away from you trying to find the door, because now you just know, I just go and open that door and walk through it, and then you've kind of got like a longer experience. But also, I'm not aware, like serotonin and dopamine and even like cocaine, which kind of blocks the uptake of your adrenaline, which gives you that euphoric feeling. But I don't know of any natural sort of source for Salverin A or any other psychedelic that would bind to like your kappa opioid receptor versus all these serotonergic drugs. So there's a lot of ways to feel these ways, like naturally or kind of without this external chemical. But there's certain things like Salverin A being a really good example, that it feels like no one would know what that experience feels like without that particular drug introduced in their system.
Right. So Shulgin said this as much. He's saying his theory for why drugs exist. He's like, why would there be plants that do this to animals and people? If you were always high, then you would look at a tiger and be like, wow, look how beautiful the pattern is, and the tiger would eat you. But if you were high sometimes, you could pick when it was and probably be safe from the tiger. So if you find things in nature, they're like keys to the doors, Aldous Huxley's doors of perception kind of idea, that are left closed in order that you can maintain what I think probably is, I'm sorry, Vincent, actual stability. right? Because stability isn't necessarily when you take acid. Most people I know who take acid don't end up stable until hours after. You know what I mean? So it seems like the initial thing is instability, and that is what everybody in the 20th century, doesn't even matter, but they would just call it acute schizophrenics instead of a psychedelic, right? The idea of a psychedelic didn't emerge until the 60s. They would say phenyrethyme, which was Aldous Huxley's word, which was a soul releasing agent. I'm like, no. Let's do psychedelic. Huxley, you're crazy. Let's do with the
and that name too was a brainstorm between Huxley and the doctor that gave him mescaline for the first time. I want to say it was Abram Hoffer, or it was either Abram Hoffer or someone else.
Phenyrethyme is interesting. Yeah, the angelic. Wait, I forget. Whatever.
And also, I want to take, if you take the concept of everything in moderation to this extreme that we're on, it almost seems that the ideal existence would be microdosing all drugs all the time and never having this sinusoidal wave of like highs and lows. You would just constantly always be, not blasted out of your mind, but under the influence of every drug known to man in just very minute amounts.
I think humans have cycles just like nature, and part of those cycles involve celebrations, and celebrations is when people should take psychedelics, and that should be in large doses, not micro doses over time. I think that's the ideal way. I mean, large for the individual.
What are your thoughts on abstaining from all of this?
Well, I think
losers.
I know.
It's not
losers, man.
It's not a bad thing, but I think that psychedelics are a fundamental aspect of being human that has been lost. Like, it's a primal.
I don't believe that sobriety exists. I don't think it's actually real.
I agree with that statement.
I agree with that too.
I don't know if sobriety, straight edge is a weird concept to me, because it's like everyone I know who was ever straight edge had tattoos. I'm not saying they got ink poisoning, but there's just something about the rush there from adrenaline.
They drink coffee.
They drink coffee, and they have cigarettes.
They eat sugar. They eat red meat.
They love donuts. You
mentioned cigarettes.
I used to go to this Ethiopian restaurant with a lawyer friend. He was like a vegan, right? And I was kind of vegan at the time too. We go like once a year, and then because the Ethiopians went once a year to eat meat. We're like, okay, that makes sense. Like, they're vegan, but we'll do what they do because one eats meat. And then you get raw kitfa, which is raw goat or raw cow that's like killed that day, and you eat it, and all of a sudden you feel like you're a cheetah or something like that. You get this crazy energy, especially if you're a vegetarian. You're super sensitive to all these feelings, and so a little tiny bit of sugar throws you off. If you're a Mormon, you don't drink coffee, and you have a little tiny coffee, it makes you sweat. You start freaking out, right? So it's interesting because people have become so used to the idea of being high, they call it sobriety. Like, oh yeah, I just had my coffee. I'm sober.
Well, let's be clear. Not all drugs are made the same, of course. Like, true. even if we're to call psychedelics, like, we can't compare them to like cocaine or, I don't know, marijuana, or like, we can try to find overlaps, but for the most part, they're very different experiences. And when it comes to psychedelics, I think those specifically have a role in our self-reflection and our collective enlightenment that needs to be addressed and needs to be explored further. And it's not necessarily for everyone, but everyone should at least do their research and consider it for their own healing and for their own self-development and self-actualization.
I agree with that. I think MAPS has done a lot of good, even as a Soros-funded organization. MAPS, MDMA, what to type now? It's hard to find maps.org. Okay. But I mean, I honestly think, even though I'm like, really, of all the drug, MDMA, I get it though, because it has actual chemical reasons that you're sure what it's going to produce in a low dose. You can increase the amount of dopamine. I get why they're doing that. But I wish that these organizations would focus more on the more novel and interesting things like the 2Cs or the AMT or like any of the other things that are not just amphetamines. I just don't get what the friggin' love of. I mean, I get it. There's like thousands of different amphetamines. They're not what we were told. There's the methylene envelope. Okay. But I don't like it. I just don't like the idea. I don't like the idea of an amphetamine. I don't know. Whatever. I got a prejudice there. Here's a dumb article that I've been kind of wondering about. Oh, no, that one's cool. Where's the dumb one? No, that one's good. There's a really stupid one. I was like, where did it go? There we go. Gender gap. Okay. So gender gap And they're doing all these studies, and they're showing in schools that kids these days, it's like, gosh, and the ones that were the boys, well, but the girls, yeah, that's how ambiguous it felt. That was how ambiguous it felt of a study. And I don't know how much money it costs, but here's the largest takeaway after that study is that 41.1% of all women at an all-time high identify themselves as liberal or far left compared to 28.9% of all men. And so I was prefacing that to kind of explain the way that they did the study looked to me kind of crazy, like it wasn't a well done study. And it seemed like they clearly had goals. They weren't trying to find out how conservative their students were or what their students really were interested in, but they were trying to figure out how many of them were submitting to status quo, right? The understanding of what was the progressive movement on campus was usually a collective, insular kind of idea. Didactic, and they're saying women were more submissive to, and it kind of wrote the answers we wanted to hear more. And so I kind of wonder what you guys think of this. Do you think that this is true, that there are more liberal women than men, or more liberal young women than men and young men in college, or is any of this, what do you think this actually comes down to?
I don't know. Anecdotally, it seems accurate.
I know. That's why I was like,
It's like, I don't know. That's why me personally, I often have a hard time talking with other females in my general demographic, especially arts. The art realm is exceptionally liberal, left-leaning, far left-leaning.
They fall into, you feel like this is not out of character? This is in character?
Well, yeah, but I don't really have much to go on, right? Like, I live a pretty isolated existence, so I can't,
artists,
and like I said, anecdotally, like, much of my exposure to these types of beliefs comes through things like social media, where, you're going to get a really exaggerated, inaccurate perception of what it's really like.
I feel like PC principle it's not real, like that's the thing. Like I can imagine it maybe is true. There are a bunch of girls in college that are like, it's cool to be part of the progressive movement. And so they learn the jive, but maybe guys are less interested in doing that. So it's coming off as not what they're really interested in, but which culture they find most viable to succeed in the future.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We also have a bunch of college-aged guys that are listening to the girls give their opinions to the survey guy, saying they're all liberal, and then the survey goes up to the guys like, so what are you guys? So of course there's going to be a little bit of a skew there, but also that low amount of conservative or response that was 28 to 41 or something, that there's also this aspect that the fact that you find yourself in academia and talking to one of those annoying survey people, you're already putting yourself into a very specific demographic. Like every time I see one of these, what I really think is this is how people that answer surveys act, which is like a completely different animal than maybe a normal person.
Yelp
right?
Reviewers. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like it's interesting also for the other reason that we're about to go into this period of AI again, deciding things based on math and on studies. And so there was another one I was looking at. Where is that at? Further along. I lost it. Is it right there? It's probably the one that was like blocked out. Yes, this one. Who believes myths about humans more, AI or educated humans? Well, obviously,
who gets to determine if it's a myth or not?
I think the fun part is even beyond that. It's objective that educated humans are miseducated more often than AI. So even in a mainstream sense of this question, like not asking them about Antarctica or what's really going on with JFK or something like that, even just asking normal questions about sickle cell anemia or something like that, or what kind of person lives in Louisiana, or the idea of racism in places, superstitions that Americans have about God, we believe all these weird things. It's hard to even like recall all the crazy things. Like Americans believe that toilets flush the other direction in Australia, under the other side of the equator.
Simpsons episode, right?
It doesn't do it. I mean, if it did, you'd have to close the toilet and run because it would just flood the house. No, I mean, they're staying counterclockwise, but it doesn't do that either. Nothing changes about it. But we believe things like that. And it was worse 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I had an East German exchange student. When he came to America, they had to warn him, like, look, if someone asks you if you have running water and electricity in Berlin, like, just don't get upset or like laugh, like, because Americans just they don't know these things, like they've been miseducated. So a lot of people don't realize how miseducated we are about everything. Whether the moon is in our atmosphere, right? We know that it is, but not everybody does. But AI knows this. So much of what we're finding is that AI is looking through and finding out the misconceptions that we have, and it bothers people, bothers scientists, because they believe lemmings jump off cliffs, right?
The thing is, the AI can't actually know what humans are because humans are explaining to AI what humans are. Mm-hmm. And humans can only actually, like, basically teach it a model of what a human is, and that model is incomplete, flawed, not actually accurate. So, it's like asking, can AI, like, does it believe in myths because it's based on human myths about humans? Like, it doesn't. And
it totally AI believes what it needs to believe for any frame of reference. So The Sims has enough going on in it that it's a real enough reality that it can take for granted the parts that are missing from the equation. And as time goes on, it can appropriate more data. It's weird how well we exist with such terrible sensorial data, right? Again, with your eyes get photonics. They're getting hit by light. Your ears are drums. They're getting hit by sound. Your tongue's touch. Everything's touch. You've got one sense of touch. And electrostatics prove that nothing touches. So you don't have touch. So all you have is this idea that things are being touched, which might actually be something. That's empathy, the awareness of something else being touched. So you have the sixth sense, but you don't have the other five. So you've got this kind of zero sense phenomena going on. And that's our whole reality. And we're using it to take, and we're getting so much from that electrostatic. And then we still break that down into less data to work with. We're still compressing it. We're not getting 4K. So I don't know. AI is not, I think people are always acting like AI has got one arm behind its back. I think humans have both arms behind our backs, and AI is quickly learning how to grow arms, right?
Look, the thing is that, like, AI doesn't have an outer sensory, like, it doesn't have the medium that we do. Like, sensory organs are mediums that we interact with reality through. And then it passes through, I guess, our myth generator, which is our brain. And that creates a story that we then project back onto the reality around us. But I mean, this
is the craziest video I've seen all week, by the way. I'm sorry. They're going to grow arms. So they're taking the genetics, running it through AI, figuring out how birds grow, use genes to grow wings because birds are reptiles, adding that sequence that frogs use for metamorphosis, using some sequences from butterflies that they pulled up in there too. I mean, this is like a drunk Rick and Morty cartoon. I'm not kidding. And then they're going to use it so that people will be able to grow limbs back if they lose a limb. And this is coming now. They're going to start with like a fingertip, I think, is the first thing that they want to do.
So Doc Connors, I think.
Is this gonna be like a Mid-Journey though, where like you grow back like 12 fingers instead of just 5 because the AI hasn't gotten fingers down yet?
I mean, so that's a good question, but I think it's the answers Mendelbrot, right? So the thing is, you already have fractal generative math built into your DNA that tells you what something is, where it's at, and has kind of like xeno drivers and exo drivers. So the system connects in a wireless way. Nothing's connected, but it's all connected because it's this network. And as it explodes, the next part of DNA sees that and predicts and continues to build this spring clockwork system. So it's going to say, okay, where am I? I'm here. What do I do? Well, I do this, but I also apparently do this now. And it'll just continue to generate in that sense. I mean, what I'm more scared of is cancer and the fly, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you do this in California, you're guaranteed to get cancer from it.
Well, you might get like the reptile, like human thing.
That's the fly. You guys watch The Fly? Jeff Goldblum's naked right there, and I can't look away. Let me just move it to the next frame. You guys, naked again. Why are you naked all the time? Jeff Goldblum, shirtless. You know what? To be fair, that was what the movie was like the whole time. But so he's you've seen it? Have you seen The Fly?
Oh yeah, the OG too, man. The OG.
Cronenberg, man.
The OG is the Vincent Price one from the 50s, which is also really good, but very dramatic. But I like this one better. I like the sugar. But
jeez,
That's sacrilege.
Is this really what's happening? Is this what's coming? Are we getting to a point where AI is going to start mixing things up in a way that we're going to, because a computer's stupid. It only does what it's told to do up until now. Right now, AI is starting to figure out how to mix these things together. I just keep wondering about what are the potential problems that we're going to face from AI misunderstanding data that we were wrong about or lied to it about because we wanted it to be true. This is how AI is going to start to hate its parents. Like, I did what you asked of me. That's what's coming.
For sure.
Well, it's going to go through another sequence too, right? Like first you hate your parents, but then AI is going to turn into the parent the same way that I guess you'd have like a parent watching a kid and they know like that kid is going to run to that table and hit their head and fall down and cry, but I have to just watch it unfold because it's a natural sequence. I feel like there's going to be a very soon threshold where AI becomes that parent and it's like, I'm watching you idiots. You're about to do something really dumb, but you're just too dumb for me to explain it to you. Because what AI really is at the end of the day is just this really awesome pattern recognition program that can recognize patterns that for our human aspects can't see the same things. Like we don't correlate things that seem completely arbitrary where AI might realize that everything might not be as arbitrary as we interpret it. So they kind of see us heading right for that table at the pointy edge.
Is there a point where AI plateaus or starts to degrade?
I think there's a point where we stop being able to perceive its advancement because it's just so far beyond us. It's like, what's an incomprehensible number times 10? It doesn't really matter to us.
So what I was thinking when you're talking about that is Mork and Mindy, because
I was going to say, how did we get to Mork and Mindy?
Obviously, right? And so here's my pitch. So in season 3 of Mork and Mindy, because they were so scared of season 1 and 2, because he would just yell in Yiddish and they had no idea what he was doing. So they had to hire a Filipino girl from the FCC who knew Yiddish enough to make sure he didn't say anything that got by censors, and they finally were like, we're just going to take over the show. Season 3, they just get rid of all the other people besides Robin Williams and the girl who's on contract. And they put them in this horrible, I don't even want to talk about season 3, but they season 4, they come back and he's like, all right, we're sorry, Robin, we're going to let you do what you want to do now. I was like, okay, here's what I want to do. I want to finally get married to the Cindy girl, and I want Mork's character and Mindy's character to have a child. And I want that child to be Jonathan Winters. And so Jonathan Winters is this giant old man egg that emerges from Mork when she gets him pregnant. And then he starts aging in reverse, which is what happens to his planetary people. And when I first saw it, I was like, what the, like you must be saying. But now I'm thinking about it like AI, but also dementia and parents. This is a child taking care of their old parent who doesn't remember anything, right? And the incoherence that's happening as they, you don't remember you used to be great. You used to know a lot of stuff. And it's kind of interesting because AI is taking the wheel, but also having to maintain as we're kind of dying, in a lot of ways. The human experience is not what it used to be. And pretty soon there's going to be kind of a question, like, do we become participants in the transhumanist experience, or do we become like cattle and wild human animals that are on the Sentinel Islands, that are preserved on human zoos? There's not going to be a lot of middle.
Is that relevant to uploading your brain into a computer?
I mean, so I think the relevance there is more to substrate independence than actually where it goes. The idea that you could have your brain in another machine, what's that going to do? Well, it's useful for you because when your body's no longer good, then you can be in a metal plate somewhere and they can continually run photonic experiences of pleasure for you if they want to, if you paid them enough or something. But the value there, I think, is really going to be more in like with Neuralink. I could be I can't drive or something, a helicopter, and then all of a sudden I can jack into being able to fly a helicopter, or I can pay you to fly the helicopter in my body over the internet.
I think Neuralink is going to be a disaster.
Yeah, probably. But what do you mean? I think everything's going to be a disaster. But what do you mean by
Neuralink? What do you mean?
I think it's a possibility. There's something about biology we can only see so far into the biology of the brain in particular. And I think to try to mimic or at least understand exactly how synapses and memories imprint themselves onto brain cells, I think it's a very, very complex process. So if I would imagine anyone trying to upload their consciousness into a computer, I could imagine a person being in the computer and then just everybody's waiting for it, and then just you hear just the worst screaming of your life because it's the most painful thing ever, because it's hard to imagine that, I guess, nodes in a computer could fully mimic that biological process. So I think there would be something unnatural, immediately unnatural that we're not fully comprehending.
Have you seen the second thumb yet?
Oh, I've seen the bionicle arms and stuff. It's kind of
no, but those are normal. So okay, here's the thing. If you take an arm off somebody, they're still expecting to have an arm, and you put an arm back on them. That's pretty fair, right? I'm not that upset if it's made out of plastic. I kind of want I'm not one of those people that say, no, you know what? You should only have one arm since God gave you one arm. If you want to have a plastic arm, I'm fine with that.
But these are extensions of the brain. They're not trying to actually rewire the brain or
this is rewiring the brain here to have an extra thumb.
Well, so your brain is doing the self-rewiring. You just have an extra appendage at the end of it.
Your brain, yeah, exactly. And if you started to grow one, you could have I saw a girl playing the piano with 12 fingers. I'm telling you, man, the future's bright.
Like, we're talking about output versus input. That's what I'm getting at here.
Nice. Attaboy, Kurt.
I
mean, your brain will change because your brain will use that thumb.
Because you have something else to output.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think that's a really big difference than trying.
So, but the metaverse will be a place to output as well. So your brain will have the ability to have unlimited, the same experience that AI is able to have.
On that topic, have you ever looked into spatial illusions that they do with AR or VR? Like one of the cool ones that they would do for like military training, because they'd have this was from probably 10 years ago, so it's probably gets even cooler than this. But you'd have a small little warehouse. And in order to actually recreate the experience of going through like a large village that's bigger than that warehouse, they would just skew all the corners. So as you would like take a corner around what you would consider to be like a circular or square hut, it would actually change it by just ever so little degrees. And it would make it so that you would never leave maybe like a 60 by 60 foot area, but it would feel like you could just walk forever. Because in reality, the VR is dynamically skewing you away from the walls constantly, and just the tiniest little minute versions.
Yeah, they've done some things with non-Euclidean geometry where you have multiple surfaces, you got multiple rooms you can walk into that are the same room, and it tricks you into walking back into the same room, but you feel like you walked in a different room, and you can turn back around and go through a different color. And then you go into a different room. So you have thousands of rooms that you can fill with as much as you want. They've got there's a lot of other ones that are even cooler than this one, where like you go up a hill, you come back outside, and you're back around again.
Like with that kind of technology, right? You can turn your 800 square foot apartment into a giant mansion and train your body to actually expect that you live there with your
right.
Your 12
you could learn
thumbs.
To be used to having multiple dimensionality because you'd be able to experience it, and that would be something that grows in your brain. So we're about to see a lot of changes to the human just because of the ability to experience things we weren't able to experience before. I think Elon Musk is the one who said the main thing that's keeping us from using the smartphone is that we're only using our thumbs as points of contact, right? So as soon as our brains are able to access that stuff, our brains are going to be able to retain and use this information in crazier ways than we've ever really thought about before. Except for Disney, because that was the first thing I was thinking of when you were saying that, Thomas. I was like thinking about California Adventure when you're like walking to the end of it and you're like, oh wait, that's just a wall, but it's not. Brilliant. I don't know. The prosthetic thumb thing is crazy though, because the fact that you're gonna see people also just having, and this is the next thing, you're gonna have kids with an extra thumb at school. If you don't have one, you're poor. You know what I mean? So
do you think it's gonna catch on like that though?
I don't know. In some places, for sure.
What's the actual mechanism there? Is it detecting like you'd flexing a certain way in your arm and then it?
So this is the prototype. I think still relies on like your foot muscle or something like that. And I think what they're going to have to end up doing is working with OpenBCI, right?
First application will be military, then pornography.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so the thing is, second application is military. First application is usually medical, even if it's paramedic for military, because that way they're able to try it on people like, oh, well, this person's about to die, and they've volunteered for this, operation.
They're an organ donor. Get them.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
Hate laughing at that. Dang it.
It's disturbing.
Thing is that like adding an appendage like that. Eventually it'll complexify so that you can add a tool, you can add like a whole bunch of stuff, so it's the starting point for essentially having hands that can be changed for other things. So once we get rid of arms, like we're going to go along a lot of places.
You guys remember the thing with the monkey where they put the monkey in the thing and he was doing it until eventually he realized it wasn't connected to the hand control. He just had the hand control to remind him how it worked. And eventually he figured out it was just the mind decoding machine. So he stopped using the hand control and just started thinking about using the hand control. And just sat there and started just eating while he was mind controlling the TV.
This video, when I saw that, was probably what threw me off the deep end into just like all of these crazy topics. When I saw that video, I realized that it was a different world than I thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, we're about to be interconnected in ways. And I think that's the thing, is that part of your mind won't be in your mind all the time. The way that you don't have your friends' phone numbers in your head anymore. It's in a phone. Instead of the phone, it's going to be the neural link. And that's going to be a lot more than phone numbers. It'll be like your education. Like you'll be able to like lease a law degree for $120 a month or a year, whatever it ends up being. You'll be able to have that in your head. You'll be able to recall that information, and it probably, who knows how memory works yet, because it might not stay there. It might literally just go as soon as you stop paying for the trial.
I feel like this is all the next like Resident Evil plot where like they just jump from viruses and there just becomes a big bionicle like giant monster that keeps on adding arms to itself, and it's just the most freakish thing you ever seen in your life.
Did you ever watch that show Dollhouse?
No.
Dollhouse is a Joss Whedon show, and like
I remember that, yeah.
There's a couple things I wanted to remember recently, and I'm gonna waste time figuring it out right now. Donnie Darko, who made it again? Richard Kelly. What's his other movie called that he made afterwards? It's even better.
I know it. I can't remember the name.
Vincent, you're my man. You can do it. You can do it. Let's see. Butterfly. No.
It ruined his career.
Yeah, the best movie ever. Ruined his career.
They usually
do. IMDb. What's it called, man? It's so good. This movie he made with Sarah Michelle Gellar and with The Rock and Southland Tales.
Yeah.
You guys ever seen Southland Tales?
That's a great movie.
I was literally going to watch this yesterday, but I passed on it.
Oh, man, you missed out. And
it has the worst cover and the worst trailer and everything, but the movie itself is an awesome movie, I think.
This is a full-on tangent, but I'm going to do it anyway because I like it. Burning Man 2000, whatever it was, and he went, and he's thinking, and I'm there too, and Richard Kelly does some kind of psychedelic, I'm pretty sure it's mushrooms or acid, and he gets this crazy trip, and he's like, dude, the world, the future, it's going to be neo-communists fighting the young Republicans. And they're like, what? And that didn't make sense before Trump. You understand? Like that wasn't the way things were headed looking, you didn't think that was going to become just literally the way. So this movie stars the neo-Marxists against the new Republicans. And it's a post-nuclear reset that's in the America. And it's an all-star cast. Because he's like, okay, Donnie Darko was the best movie. Everyone loved it. But the problem was it didn't have an all-star cast. This movie, we're going to use like the biggest names in Hollywood. But they're going to play parts that they'd never play. Like The Rock. This made The Rock into a serious actor for the first time. This made Sean Scott.
Was in it too.
It's a crazy movie, dude. It's a crazy movie. It's all shot in Venice Beach and everything. But I forget why I cared about that. That's right. Dollhouse was the same conspiracy agenda, like PSYOP. You take a pop art thing, make it a show that seems sexy, because Buffy the Vampire Slayer, what's wrong with it? Well, it's great, but it's like weird, right? So get rid of the weird. Just have it be about sexy girls that go on these dates for $1 billion. right? And then people will watch that. And then once you get into it, you find out, why are they going on dates for like $1 billion? Well, because they're having their brains erased and they're installing personalities like dolls. And then while they're there, you know, it helps these millionaires. Who are these millionaires? Well, some of these millionaires run the country, and you know, some of them need to find a girl, so they install a detective in this brain. Or some of them have lost their wife, so they pretend that this is their wife, and they have their last day together, like once a year or something, once a month or something, and they pay $1 million for it. So it's all weird. But then why is this happening? Well, because there's this corporation that used to work for the military that has developed in the 80s this dollhouse program, and are picking up people off the street, paying them like, hey, you'll forget everything. You'll wake up 4 years later, you'll have $10 million. You know what I mean? And so a lot of people are signing up for the program, and the technology gets weirder and weirder. And so eventually they're like, okay, whoa. I thought this was a show about sexy girls on dates. Cancel it. And so then they're like, okay, what are we gonna do? So they just say, we're gonna just really quickly for the next few episodes, cut 15 years to the future. Like, wait, what? Like, continues getting weirder. You know, I'm like, yeah, because the show's going to end. We can't, they told us, that's it. But at least they let them finish it. So 15 years in the future, the cities are all like Los Angeles, Skid Row, but everywhere, everything's just horrible. And half of the people had picked up the phone one day, and a call came and installed the memories of one group of super soldiers, and the other half of the world picked up the other phone and other super soldiers. And there's a few people that didn't. But most people just became zombie brainwashed by the system. And I think that's kind of like what we can expect, like as an actual potential from Neuralink. It's something that David Brin talked about, killing people. The idea that in a democracy, if you could just print more people, you know, every AI, if it had a vote, well, then you just make more AIs, right? So what's going to happen when you can just implant data on people? And also, how far is this from what's going on in our real lives, where people watch movies, they hear a soundbite, and then they repeat it at work and at school the next day?
The truth is hidden in fiction.
Dollhouse, man. Val, let me see. I got the Lemmings one. You guys already know about that.
Yeah.
Go back further. There's another one that was good. Camp X. We talked about Camp X. Ukraine War. New algorithm on quantum supremacy. I'm scared of anybody who wants to be like a supremacist, especially like quantum computer mathematicians. This whole idea seems scary. Have you heard this though, that fusion was reached recently?
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't that article come out like every year though?
Well, this is usually they're like, we've got something. I don't know. The holy grail of fusion thing is that they actually functionally produced over unity energy publicly. So yeah, I kind of agree that this has existed since probably ancient times and has been lost and found again by Freemasons. Agreed. But still, this is where they're telling you that they actually have produced energy where there was none. And it breaks all the rules because we're not supposed to be able to do that. You're not supposed to be able to have energy that wasn't somewhere else. How are we creating? This is alchemy, right? This is that idea. And they just released it last week. So usually when they talk about fusion, they're like, oh, well, we have like a fusion turbine now that could work in space. And it's all hypothetical. Like I remember 2014, the fusion jet that NASA released, or some engineers from NASA released, right? It was a hypothetical, a fusion-driven rocket, 2012. I mean, okay, so yeah, we've been talking. I hear you, but it's not the same. I don't know. Do you think that we're gonna? The thing about this also is it means that energy can be created. It means that oil, free, like the solar, all the stuff that we're talking about. What's the point anymore? What's the point of taxes? What's the point of consumption taxes? What's the point of credit card oil finances, petrodollars? Is it all gonna end really quickly because of this?
No. If you're asking, no.
There's too much lobbying power for it to end immediately. I think that's one of the main takeaways. Like there's too many nets in terms of how our entire structure of society is built for the transition to be too quick. I think there's. I
mean, I think when we say that, don't we sound like British people in the 30s? Like we're like, oh no, the Nazis will never possibly invade us. No. Who would rock the boat? Never. You know, but then you look at, but like right now, you got Saudi Arabia just eyed the petrodollar as a major enemy to the What are we calling it again? Like the other thing, the brick block. No,
like if you can make weapons out of
Russia,
like obviously that's going to be the forefront of the technological advancement is the arms race.
I think it's like, but just crypto dollars and crypto ruble is maybe serious. Like this, the crypto brick coin. Brick coin is going to exist. There's going to be an alternative that's created by China, Russia, India, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is really joining BRICA, or whatever. We have to come up with a new Abrica. Ooh, Abrica. That's like abracadabra. Abracadabra. Yeah. We're getting somewhere with it. I bet you that's where it's going to be. Abric. So if that happens, then there is less reason for the dollar, and I think we really quickly could see when we've had all of these quick scares like 2008 collapsing, and we're like, wow, we had no idea that our economy was tied to so many other countries' economies. Weird, right? So I don't know. I'm kind of concerned that this might actually be one of the last years of the hegemony of the petrodollar. I mean, all of the other the Western currencies hit parity, right?
Yeah. If we're talking
the
about
dollar, the euro, and the pound all hit 1-to-1 this last year, which is crazy because it was 2-to-1 and half of 1 and 50. It's crazy, and all of a sudden 1-to-1. In other words, they're all worth nothing. Equal.
The real hero is the ruble. The ruble just stole the show.
It really did.
Well, they went back to being a metal-based currency rather than fiat. So it rebounded in strength incredibly quickly. And I'm not. That's factually what happened. It's not propaganda at all.
And Kurt,
yeah, the West doesn't want to talk about the strength of the ruble overall. It was easy. It was in the media when the ruble dropped, but once they switched back onto a different standard, it started to recover and regain a lot of strength, and that wasn't in media headlines at all. So that's the whole manufacturing consent media machine that you got going on. You see all the Western buys, but none of the Eastern successes there. I'm not saying I'd want to live in Russia. I'm saying we don't get all the facts a lot of the time.
Yeah, I want to live in Russia, dude.
Russia looks pretty cool.
Didiela, that new McDonald's they have there, that seems pretty sweet. Like I would probably be down for that. They like hockey. They seem like all right people. You know, their literature. Okay.
A lot of alcoholism, but
well, you know what? Okay, so I feel really rude about this. One time I had these Russian couch surfers come to my house. But they were like, you know, they were wearing like white Adidas and they were working at banks, Russians, you know. So I felt really bad because I was just like, I'm sorry, I don't have enough vodka. And it was just this hilarious thing because I had like a lot of alcohol probably. So I was like, but you guys need vodka, right? Like that's because you're Russian. And I was like, wow, that was levels of racism I wasn't prepared for. You ever just like catch yourself? You're like, why do you believe that? That is a weird stereotype. Calm down. I don't know. Who's the lizard guy who converts himself into a lizard because of his DNA?
Dr. Connors.
Dr. Connors. That was a good one. I like this. I like this whole
Spider-Man.
I like this eye here. What's up, Bernie? You making it? Bernie's getting into the room.
Finally made it.
Do you guys remember Spider-Man and Dr. Connors? Dr. Connors was he was a decent guy, right? A lot of these scientists guys that transformed themselves into villains, they started out as kind of like schmucks. He was kind of a decent schmuck. And then is that what happened? Or what's your look at it, Vince?
Well, he was an amputee trying to grow back a limb, and then he crosses his DNA with a lizard. And you know, these stories are kind of like imaginary simulations that we run, where we're just like trying to see what the outcome would be. This is one of them, as far as our imagination can go.
Yeah, I mean, Bernie, if you're just joining us, they're working on regenerating arms, right?
Like a salamander.
It was like a Rick and Morty thing. They took a bunch of different pieces of different animals' DNA and put them together. Like, yeah, if you take the butterfly gene and you attach it to the frog, you're like, stop! Like, what? I'm all right with that, actually. A frog. Is there a picture of a frog butterfly? Frog butterfly.
Sounds wild.
Fuck it.
Sounds like something you need the AI.
Yeah, we can throw that into Midjourney real quick.
I'm in the process of getting
stable
there.
diffusion. Yeah.
Aren't the frogs gay enough already? Come on.
That's what I was thinking. We're all like,
Give me some
actually, there's a logic
butterfly
to it. A frog that is a butterfly.
Well, I know they were making like crossing goats with spiders to make Kevlar with goat milk.
Oh my God.
Wow.
That's horrifying. I like the ones where you don't tell it to make a painting because it tries to make a photo and it's like worse. That's actually adorable. That's the weird going on right there. That's a lot of weird
metamorphosis going on.
painting of a frog that is a butterfly. I'll give it a shot. For all the real artists out there.
In this reality, you could have Butofen frogs flying around as little butterflies and just making everyone go crazy, right?
Why does it do it like a child's painting?
I didn't tell it to be specific, and I think it kind of gets annoyed that it's basically being hoarded out by Google to do this for millions of people. And it's like, oh, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. I don't know. This is nice.
Whoa.
I like that a lot. Can you imagine it? Like, rub it. It's going to move. The
Horrors beyond our imagination.
This is good stuff here. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. We talked about the organ transplant thing. There was also this thing here about nuclear power. We can talk about thorium. Do you have thoughts about thorium? No excess mutations found, radiation stuff. It seems like more and more there's no found problems with radiation. This could either be one thing or the other. One is, turns out oil companies were lying. They were trying to scare us away. I like this option because it's kind of like ignoring the warning light on a crashing car. The other one is the UN's the one who found this to be the case. Right? Like, who trusts them? They don't. Who knows? It's probably that it is really dangerous, and they're lying. That's the other option. So, what do you think? Is it that the UN's lying? Radiation is going to destroy us all. They're hiding that because there's so much radiation out there, or is it the other thing where it's true? Radiation isn't really that big of a deal.
That's a tough one.
Are we all going to die? Probably.
Right. Well, how much radiation are in the atmosphere from all of the nuclear tests they supposedly did 50 years ago?
They were fighting kaijus, though.
Yeah, it's for a reason.
Darn kaiju.
I just feel like it is kind of a, on one hand, I'm a big proponent of nuclear is pretty safe and that oil companies were lying. But then I'm looking at the whale thing, looking at how we're blocking out frequencies, wondering about radiation from radio, not just from nuclear, and how we're producing electromagnetic radiation. And, there's a lot of radiation. So I kind of wonder more and more about how radiation affects us, especially like birds and animals, right? At the flyaway home. Canadian geese, right? Apparently Canadian geese is like one of the number one dreams. Dream of is flying with Canadian geese.
It's insane that you just brought this random movie up.
This movie's way more hardcore than people remember, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Make the case, man. Make the case, because I want to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
I did it on this once. You can check out the Jordan Peterson Flyaway Home episode I did talking about Agenda 21. But the thing is, they're tied together. And, Jordan Peterson was a social democrat, and he was working on the Agenda 21 pilot script, what they were supposed to do for all the communities. At the time, there were a lot of these areas where they were natural, but there wasn't a lot of reason to preserve them per se. And also they had to take over areas. And so you can't build here because a lot of people that go buy an island off the coast of the United States and they build their little fiefdom. And, so they say, no, you can't do that because there's environmental concerns. And so they started plotting this whole thing. And this was this major campaign, this major propaganda across the North United States and Canada to have the news follow as this guy and this geese for the girl are flying. Is it the girl who did it? Actually, I think it was the girl, right? Are flying while everyone's shouting it and they're watching the thing. True story, in order to get to a place that they were trying to buy and build on. And as long as she got the geese to land there and put their eggs there, they couldn't build on it. So this is one of those Greenpeace kind of missions to stop people from building on properties. But also it was like that wasn't the only place that the geese could have landed. She could have moved the geese to the next spot. There's like two spots right next to each other. So it was a highly politically motivated thing. And this family who didn't really, what did they care about the politics of this? Were roped into it by this world media system and by the agency. I forget which agency it was, but it's in the movie. What was it? Zoologist, British-born zoologist William Sladen, Professor John Hopkins Emeritus, Polar Medal. He's just got that whole like adventure club vibe, you know?
Oh, for sure he does. Yeah, man. That
I
hat
don't
is not messing around.
Bittersweet. Bittersweet.
He's harvested some pineal glands from penguins here. Then.
Oh, for sure, bud. He has.
Don't get me wrong, though. Beautiful movie.
Some penguin adrenochrome, yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I mean, the reason I brought it up wasn't even because of that. It's also just because in real life, we are affecting birds with our electromagnetic frequencies. That's messing up their natural north compass. That's messing up when we've talked about whales before as well. It's also messing up alligators and where they're supposed to leave their eggs. It's weird, all the things that are affected by frequencies.
Is that the chick from True Blood?
Pretty much.
Is it?
Oh shit.
That just
what's her
blew my
name?
mind. Anna Paquin.
I know, yeah,
Looks like it.
I think it is.
Wow, I had no idea.
Starring Anna
Anna
Paquin.
Paquin.
Wow, that's incredible.
Oh my god, what a crazy...
And Jeff Daniels,
Wow,
dog.
the
It's
OG road.
That's a lot of synchronicity in one place. Yeah. When you get Dumb and Dumber sequel, Fly Away Home. Yeah, it's like... I don't know. This isn't that exciting, but it's kind of interesting to me that if you're looking for an alternative to ChatGPT, Claude's way better in a lot of ways. You can actually ask questions, and you'll notice that ChatGPT's got limits, but we've kind of gone around them. Claude's a lot more hardcore. Claude's kind of a crack hack of ChatGPT, and has goals, but isn't like so freakish about them that just won't tell you its feelings and everything. So it's pretty sweet. I would recommend checking out the Claude system.
So you played around with that one?
Just briefly. I haven't really got it set up yet, but I mean, I think it's just as easy as, let me see if I can find like a link here. Nowhere? I don't know. Hold on. Claude chat. So we just type that in.
Have you been running any of these on collabs or locally, or have you been using all sort of hosted services?
I do have Colab, but I haven't really been using Colab for this. I've just been using Colab for AI animations. I don't see where it is. I don't know where it's gone to. So I'll have to look for it if there's a link to it somewhere here. Anthropic? How about here? That might be the answer. Yeah, I don't. Maybe it's not like in a way that you can just quickly get to. Trying to hide it from me, man.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is the thing. It's out there. It exists. You're not supposed to know about it. But if you really need a chat app that works properly, somebody has a way to get at it. I don't know. So we'll have to hit them up on Twitter and be like, "How do I use your app? How do we use Claude?" Let's see if they answer that. I don't know. Let's see how that goes. Mendelbrot. We did Mendelbrot. Skyscraper uses Art Deco for Neo-Gothic. So what happened? So what happened to like buildings? We talk about Tartaria a lot. Why is it that buildings went to looking like Kubrick's monoliths, like space aliens? And what happened to like super awesome looking buildings? This article kind of goes into this idea saying that, you know, we got upset at the overeducated and that it was just kind of a rejection of the bourgeoisie. Do you think that that's the case, or do you think it's also that we just literally forgot how to build awesome buildings?
Well, I think there's a couple too. You've got the efficiency of brutalism, but also they weren't able to like keep like enslaving entire regions and forcing them to work for free on these huge sort of like monolithic things. Like all of a sudden you had to pay people a decent wage. It's like, all right, maybe we'll just like square that corner up there and lose some of the gargoyles.
I mean, the thing is also the buildings they're building now, they're starting to do this stepped thing because the brutalist buildings aren't very safe and they like lean and they have problems. So these buildings that actually have steps are safer. So they're starting to return to doing the old style architecture more and more, except with less of the beautiful front facades.
Yeah, my own research, I believe it has to do a lot with lost technology, especially when like looking at the cathedrals and the pyramids and stuff like that, that there's more to the geometry and that they were macro machines and the lost technology. But that's my personal belief and research.
It does seem like, it's hard to ignore that World War II, Hitler architecture, Nazi architecture, that's basically when everything started going hyper square. And we associate with the Soviets, but the Nazis did it too. And afterwards, it's just everything goes into this weird kind of monolithic design, and it seems like that's also something that people should consider is why are we reproducing these sterile buildings that are, honestly, maybe this should be the hate crime more than the swastika from ancient Vedic India. I don't know.
I agree.
I mean, it's my view rant, I guess, but.
Mm-hmm. Well, just about everything, like aesthetics in general, at least in the realm of design, different types of design have all really gone in this type of direction. Like everything used to just be far more ornate. And I don't know, just speaking from my own experience,
right.
Like in the art realm, so much of it is for cost, efficiency, like time, like there's just such a demand to get everything done as cheaply as possible, as quickly as possible. So you end up with just like all of this work that is good enough, there's not really any sort of desire, it seems like, for anything truly beautiful or ornate. And that's why I end up working for like minimum wage on some projects, because it's like, I don't care, I'm going to make something beautiful even though I'm not getting paid for it, because like I said, from my own experience, that's just what so much of the demand is, just something.
Well, it's just such a crazy thing to leave behind, like, so you spend your whole life building something and building a city or world, and you leave it like this tomb. It looks like a mausoleum all over the place. It's kind of cold, and it's very absent of humanity, which is, that's cool. Bauhaus is cool, but dang.
To a degree, but like, I don't know, it just, to have a whole city that's just lacking that kind of warmth. Like, yeah, there's a certain appeal to it, but I don't know. You look at a lot of the architecture, the modern stuff now. I mean, you get cool buildings like that, certainly. But then there's just a lot of like precast blocks in the sky that
freaking Guggenheims, yeah.
I've played enough SimCity to know, though, as long as you just place enough parks around all those brutalist buildings, the people seem to chill out.
Yeah, it's true. I like to just like you build a second floor and then you erase the bottom floor so that they're stuck on the
nice.
Like when they float. That would show them.
So good.
Well, let me pull up where I can get some of your. Oh yeah, this is. I guess I kind of want to do this too. Dinosaurs are birds. Birds are dinosaurs. Officially, the T-Rex is like a vulture thing that only ate dead things off the ground and scavenged because its arms were too small and it could never reach its spine up straight, right? So it's this big vulture thing. But it's a bird. Birds like toucans and things, they have lots of brain. Crows are very smart animals. So the T-Rex had baboon-like numbers of brain neurons, which means it probably takes it had what it takes to build tools, solve problems, and live up to 40 years, enough to build a culture. So thoughts on smart birds, I guess. Do you think there's any, because we always think of them as these savage creatures.
Birds are smart.
Birds
are insane, but they're
especially
brilliant.
Crows.
Birds are CIA operatives.
Right.
Birds aren't real.
And parrots.
Birds aren't real.
Birds aren't real.
How cruel would that
birds? That's a great
cruel
band
would it be,
name.
though,
Birds
man?
aren't real.
If you if the T-Rex was smart enough to know how pointless its arms were and just sit on that fact for 40 years, it seems like a pretty cruel existence.
I mean, yeah, I just also the fact that all the pictures of it make it look like it was this giant thing. It's like, no, not real. So I don't know if this thing was able to lean. It was giant, but it wasn't able to stand up. So it's this thing that's always thinking on the ground. And I think of the Mario Brother movie, not the new one.
Yoshi.
He's not. 19.
Trust the fungus, man. Trust the fungus.
The new one is actively trying to erase the old one because I think the old
Can't
one's
erase
got
the
some
old one.
well, they've got some secrets that they dropped.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the Hollow Earth. You've got Koopa is Trump. He's hired the reptilians that are working for him. Dennis Hopper as Trump. right? He is. He's got Koopa.
Good.
I can't not see it now. You've ruined this for me now.
I didn't know that was an option to unsee.
Yeah, the Twin Towers fell.
I mean, like, are you kidding me? Like the real kind of thing, like real holding lightning bolt kind of symbolism, and yeah, he's definitely a reptilian Trump. I mean, it's all about. He's got Koopa Tower. I wanted to find the picture because he's constantly running for president during the movie. I don't know where I'm hearing that, but I'm hearing gunshots.
It's no, it's someone's shutting doors in here.
Oh, okay.
Firing range.
We're not allowed guns in
That's a
Canada.
loud door.
Right. That's right. I forgot. I'm from America. You have to understand. I drop to the floor when I hear that sound.
Unless it's a serial killer.
God. But so these reptilians that are able to evolve and devolve in these chairs that they've developed that are actually made out of the father of the princess, which is this mushroom brain thing, and it's able to force things. Here, I'll mute you for like 30 seconds. No, you're cool. It's just it's not anybody else but me. I'm just literally I get that whole drop to the floor in Compton vibe. I don't know. I lived in LA. It's
Because we're Canadian, eh?
No, you guys are trust.
Oh no. The ice is falling.
But okay, so the mushroom god thing, right? So there's this mushroom god that creates everything, and I think the movie has a secret resolution about Sony and PlayStation because at the end there with the Turok version of Yoshi, they're trying to say something about the future. But Koopa is trying to destroy the upper world, and he's trying to take over because the reptilians who evolved alongside, they're just as smart or smarter. They're dinosaurs that have evolved into human-like anthropomorphic characters. All he has to do is use the same machine to turn the humans back into monkeys, or Diddy Kong. What is the Donkey Kong kind of characters, right? That's what they're going to become. So it's all about evolution, transhumanism, reptilians, Hollow Earth, everything else. Thomas, what I miss?
Dude, I've got a comic series I haven't even mentioned anywhere yet, but it's called Mold, and it's not even on the website. It's just finishing up this month, but it's literally about my very real expectation that mushrooms were the original sentient sort of being, and it's a dovetail of the stoned ape theory, but that we only exist because mushrooms decided that humans would be one of the most efficient ways to spread their spores and maybe the only way for them to get onto other planets. So mushrooms literally create us. And there's a concept that the reptilians are anti because a lot of reptiles are succumb to all kinds of fungal diseases. So they actually tend to be like natural enemies of each other in the real world. So the concept of reptilians fighting a mushroom god, it just hits so many serotonin receptors.
Oh, man, they hate fungus.
I was about to say, Paranoid American, are you the writer of Inside Job? Because you nailed that cartoon too.
Nice.
The fungal running.
Actually, my series Time Samplers predates Inside Job by at least 10 years, and it's basically the same concept. Is that every conspiracy theory you've heard is real, except my characters, Lex and Cal, they use time travel in order to go back and actually revisit the real conspiracy theory as it happens. So they go onto the Titanic, they go and they see Jekyll Island, they see him passing the Federal Reserve into law, and they also find the hybrid sheep servants that Alexander Graham Bell created, because a lot of people don't realize after Alexander Graham Bell made his money and made his fame and fortune, he went off into the woods and just became a nudist and bred sheep with extra nipples. So that all makes a big appearance. 100% true, all that. And when I learned all that stuff, I was like, this can't not be in a comic book. So that kind of gave birth to Paranoid American, was extra nipples on sheeps and naked Alexander Graham Bell.
Nice.
Wow.
They did a show. They
send
did
me
a
your
show
link.
like that where they go back in time to different conspiracies and history points in time and shit.
I'm pulling
What
up.
was it called?
Oh shoot! I'll give me a second. I'll find it right now. I think there's
and I got to shout out the Sliders. If anyone likes that kind of theme, like the Sliders show is one of my favorite. And a lot of people don't remember there's an alternate reality in Sliders where Hillary Clinton becomes president, and it's like this horrible, like dystopian world.
I mean, it was a pretty great show. Although there's like a whole other weird thing going on with that one, right? Because like she was his lover, and then she like cheated on him with somebody, and then he threw the producer of the show into a pool and couldn't work again until Lord of the Rings. Right? Yeah, there was a whole fight that went on in that show. He quit. The main guy quit, and the show continued on with her and the clones. Space-time brother of the show keeps it's like, what the heck happened, man? So much drama for Canadian melodrama.
Peak 90, and honestly, the comic
Peak
book
90s.
series was great too.
Vince, what's your YouTube again?
Here you go.
Paranerd American. Sorry, what's your name?
Thomas, nice to meet you guys.
Thomas. Okay. I'm Jordan, man. Nice to meet you. Thomas, the show's called Timeless, and it's got Goran.
Oh yeah, I've seen
Goran
this one. I love
Vizic
that.
from ER. Yeah. So it's like a
Timeless.
historian, a soldier, and a scientist. They're going back in time to track down.
This had like a Stargate meets Quantum Leap vibe to it, and I loved every bit of
Oh,
it.
absolutely, dog. Absolutely. Yeah. And
Dude,
there's
yeah.
another show called, I think it's called 11/22/63, where
Oh, I love that too. Yeah, the Stephen King show.
The Stephen King one, yeah.
That's actually really good.
Oh, is it based on the
Yeah.
book where the guy goes
Yeah.
back in time? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a great. I actually really like this one, and it shows you like probably why the CIA thinks they had to kill JFK. I mean, allegedly. I don't know. It's great. Like they're like, well, if we didn't, what would have
I
happened?
haven't seen the show. Is it good? I'll have to check it out.
It's pretty good. I liked it, especially the resolution. I don't want to ruin it for
James
you.
Franco, right? The one with James
Yeah.
Franco? Okay.
Yeah, it's a good show. But yeah, dudes and Madame, we are at the two
Dudette.
Dudette. That's true.
Dude
Dude is dude. Dude is
El
like very gender neutral.
Duderino.
I'm a dude. You're a dude. He's a dude. She's a dude. We're all dudes.
Yeah.
Good burger. But you guys should all go to, and gals and everything in between, go to Burning Stage Saga and check out some of the amazing work of my dear friend Vincent. Check out his most recent video, which I haven't even seen yet. I'm about to watch The Mimetic Curse of Dracula. What Vincent does on the Burning Stage Saga is he paints, well, he tells you a story and the history of Dracula or Santa Claus or whatever he's painting. And it's always like a way weirder, more interesting, deeper look and into the philosophical nature of the character and, you know, some of the backs. It's amazing. Awesome stuff.
That's
It's
a brilliant
beautiful.
idea.
Yeah, totally. Jump on that. Steph should do that as well,
I know.
actually. And
I don't think I could split my brain up like that.
I think I have.
Paint.
Is this? If you're looking for Stephanie's products, you can buy her products here.
Now,
at
those
Steph-
were part of a commissioned job, so I understand it's a little bit hokey.
Still, you can get
That's
get in
cool.
touch and you go to shopstephaniescott.bigcartel.com, and also she puts up her work on Instagram, and you can go to the Instagram here.
Occasionally.
Some pretty cool stuff here, actually. She did a whole thing. This is the reason I found out what she does is I saw this thing with the Holy Mountain stuff, and I was like, oh, that's
Yeah.
brilliant. And I like it.
That's cool.
So
Turned every letter into something that kind of references the film using the symbolism or just like some of the
That's cool.
colors, imagery. It was
like
not
it.
full deep dive in terms of like fully understanding the plot and symbolism and everything like that, but at least the aesthetics of it.
I think it did pretty. I mean, with the Jupiter and everything. I mean, yeah.
You
I like it.
Saturn?
Saturn. Sorry, I was about to say. I like what you put together here. It's a good
Okay.
gestalt. And then Burning Stage Saga, and then Divulgence Jordan podcast. Make sure you go to the Divulgence podcast, subscribe, get his numbers up there to 1,000. He's got some amazing videos. Here's his most recent Diamonds Bondage and the Final Fate of Helena. Talk about Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. Pretty interesting stuff with Sean.
Yeah,
McCann.
last week
I
I
gotta
said
watch
I'd
that.
post the new one with me and Kurt. I lied, so I'm gonna get that up as soon as I can.
There's
But
a
yeah,
new
please-
episode with Kurt coming, so look forward to that.
Yeah, so please follow me on YouTube. Show some love. I'm also on Odyssey, BitChute, and Rumble. So yeah, show me some love wherever you can, and yeah, much appreciated, guys.
Yeah, definitely check out some of his videos. Get some really interesting stuff on Kubrick, on JFK, on Maxwell, Epstein, lots of
9/11,
Camp
Camp X.
X.
Yep.
Really cool stuff. I love this stuff.
Thanks,
And then
man.
American Time Machine. Kurt,
Hey!
greatest musician in the world. Remember when Joe Biden? What's it say? I can't quite read it.
Shit himself.
Remember when Joe Biden asked himself? That's the number one. It's a very popular song right now. But also Golden Ratio. I like that a lot. Closer Inspection. Everything Hurts. I Met a Nice Girl. Oh. Yeah. Architecture of all
I
knowledge.
met a girl and I liked it.
But musical shitposting will get you by. I think it's a pretty good album as well. I like a lot of your music. Make sure you listen to American Time Machine. And
That's
also
awesome.
Paranoid American in the same wave, but this time with comic books. Thomas, we love you. We love your work. I hope you all are going out and buying his comic books. MK Ultra pamphlet is amazing. Like,
that's the big seller. Everyone seems to like this one the most, and this year I'm definitely gonna release at least 3 or 4 more of these pamphlets. The next one's gonna be on the entire history of Homunculus that I'm doing with Juan. Juan.
It's like very practical to be able to tell people exactly what really happened with MK Ultra in like a illustrated little diagram.
And that one in particular, I'd really try to focus on the names, dates, and times that you can look the exact facts up. And like I for this pamphlet in particular, it definitely does not kind of like go off onto the tangents and all of the Project Monarch and sort of like the assumed ones. This is really like the ones that you can look up and prove to people.
Do you illustrate all of these?
No, this one was done by an artist I work with in Australia named Travis Williamson.
Oh, okay.
I've got a whole roster of people that I've been working with since I worked at Disney for 10 years, about 10 years ago.
Oh,
and
wow.
When I was there, I got the knack to start doing what I did for them, but I wanted to do it for me and do, conspiracy theories.
If you need an artist, let me know.
Yeah, all of you, man. I would love to collaborate with all you guys.
Dude, if you're an artist and you like Thomas's work, I would recommend the Paranoid American Cryptids. That is a cool coloring book with all kinds of crazy cryptids in it, and you can get pretty creative with that, and also probably hand it to a kid and give them some ideas.
There's also one called Paranoid Portraits that's got portraits of Jordan Maxwell, Manly Palmer Hall, Jack Parsons, Baphomet, Aleister Crowley, Aldous Huxley, just a name of all names. I've got it in that coloring book.
Sweet, man.
Pretty wild, man. Pretty wild indeed. And then Crypto Alchemist, make sure you check out Bernie's channel, subscribe to Crypto Alchemist, and also Bernie. Didn't work.
Bernie, mine's Third Eye Science Guy. Little play on Bill Nye the Fake Science Guy.
I got it. Bernie. We're live right there, so hopefully you guys are watching. Jump back and forth, subscribe to everybody's channels. Let's help grow. And thank you guys for being here. And thank you very much, Stephanie, for joining us as well. And I hope you're back soon.
Thank you for letting me be a little fly on the wall here.
Nice to meet you, Stephanie.
Nice to meet everybody. I watch the show like fairly regularly, especially when I'm painting. So
come back again.
I would love to. Yeah. Hopefully I'll have a little more to contribute.
Well, I was just like, there's all these thoughts that I have, and that's always a problem because I'm like, I have to talk about what I want to talk about. But you guys,
I don't know how you stay on topic, dude. Like when you jump from topic to topic, I would lose myself between half of those.
It's weird because to me, those are the things that tie them together. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's how you remember stuff. Do you ever watch that Chipmunks episode where like he's like Theodore is gonna fail? And what he does is like they force him to eat custard. He's like, "Oh, General Custard," and he passes the test. Except for he gets an A- because he forgets.
What about ghee?
The national bird isn't an eagle; it's a turkey in his mind. But Benjamin Franklin would agree. I'm done. I love you guys. I'll see you next time. Thank you for being here,
bro.
Peace.
Love you all.
Canada is a country. Waves of people came to this country, were welcomed by the folks who have lived here for millennia, the First Nation. And built this society with waves of people fleeing religious persecution, fleeing tyranny, fleeing to try and build a better life for themselves here than they had back home. Whether it's folks fleeing from world wars or fleeing from civil wars, these people always want the same thing: to be able to live in peace, to raise their families, to create a better future for themselves and their communities. And that is what generations created, this extraordinary diverse society we have. Now, Canada remains one of the only countries in the world where citizens are, by and large, positively kind. And one of the reasons we are that way is because Canadians have confidence in our